Sword of Coming Chapter 890. Mujiadu. Green hills rise, green water flows eastward. Geese in autumn. A huge ferry is slowly approaching the shore with amazing momentum, huge ripples of spiritual energy, driving gusts of mountain wind. Compared with the ordinary Xianxia ferry, it looks unusually huge, such as a dragon playing in the shallow water. It was the Fengyuan ferry that didn't spend $50 on repairs. Only Zhongqiu and Cui Wei followed this ferry back to Longzhou and completed the first transcontinental return of the Fengyuan ferry. Qin Pingon clasped his fists and smiled. Thank you. The opening remark of the mountain lord is a lot of hard work with fists and salutes. Zhongqiu can't help being humorous and repaying courtesy with everyone. Cui Wei is a little uncomfortable, just clasped his fists. Qin Pingon was the most helpless. He was originally sincere and humane, but the result was good, but he was ridiculed by Dong Leisai. This time I went out, there were a lot of tourists from Luopishan who followed Qin Pingyuan. The mountain master brought a group of direct disciples such as Pei Qian the Wu Fufu Jianxiu Guizhujiu Zhao Xuxiao the Wu Fufu in the Five Realms and Zhao Wan the Qi practitioner. Dedicated to Xiao Mo yellow hat and blue shoes, bookcase hiking stick, more like a weak scholar who is studying and studying. There is also Miyu who is about to serve as the chief priest of the next sect, and Yu Xiehui who left from the worship platform and then traveled far away. The child saw Cui Wei, squeezed his temper and awkwardly yelled to master. Somehow he felt too awkward and the child did not forget to snorted coldly. Cui Wei nodded silently despite the accident. There was a smile in his eyes. Everything is difficult at the beginning. As long as Yu Xiehui is willing to call this master, Cui Wei has full confidence that his children will not recognize him as a master. Li Pao Shan's Hanglu lives for a long time with her new disciple Nalan Jade. I can't teach any brilliant swordsmanship, so can't I pay it back? There are so many sword repairs in the Luopa Mountain. Zhangshangzhen Miyu Cui Wei Sui right. Just buy 1 or 2 swordsmanship secrets with them. Zhongli Longming is now also the chief steward of Fengyuan Ferry. After Cui Dongshan became the next sect master, he said in the secret letter sent to Dei capital that his husband must agree to this matter, even if he holds the long life. I'm not very happy, but Mr. Lau must be persuaded. As for the reason, it is obvious that this sect master rule is a cornucopia. Because of the dividend of this wind kite ferry, the upper and lower clan is 7 or 3 points. Therefore Cui Dongshan, the lower sect master, spared no effort in digging the foot of the wall. Cui Dongshan wanted 6 to 4 points. Of course Qin Pingon did not agree. This student is crazy about money. In addition there are Jia Xing, the treasurer of Chaotu shop in Qilong Lane, and Qin Lingjun who is purely joining in the fun. The second in charge of this intercontinental ferry is the blind Taoist Jia Xing, the old of the Longmen realm, who will be responsible for managing the relationship between the ferry and various ferry crossings and Xianxia sects along the way in the future. The exchanges of friendship are a university question. There are 4 difficult ghosts on the mountain including the sword repairman, but in Jia Xing's view, there are 2 kinds of people the most difficult to deal with because the most difficult is to be insatiable. One is the literati in a small place and the other is half the genealogy master on the mountainside. Fortunately, Jia Xing thinks he has some experience in the world. At that time the owner of the mountain came to Qilong Alley personally and talked about it with the shopkeeper who had been a shopkeeper for many years. The old fairy Jia was overwhelmed with excitement and just murmured repeatedly, "Hida, how can you be uncoordinated?" That's what it said, but since it was the meaning of the mountain master, I can look down on my old bones. What else can I do? The old Jafuzi is thousands of miles away and the great burden is on his shoulders, so he can't shirk his shoulders, so he can only save himself. The old was beaten by Cui Dongshan before and took off that dazzling Taoist robe. Now that his status has changed and he has been promoted, I can't let the various immortals underestimate his mountain. No, the old moved out of the one that hasn't been for a long time. The pressure box bottom robes that I wear on my body, bathing and changing clothes, are refreshing and become more and more immortal. Xianwei refused to move, saying that it was for me to slow down. On the deck, Qin Pingon stood at the bow, waving goodbye to those who had come to see off at the ferry. Qin Pingon asked Bai Xian if he would follow Xiao Mo to practice his sword. Xiao Mo's roots and feet and the realm of cultivation, all told the truth with his children. Bai Xian shook his head and refused, saying that it didn't matter whether Xiao Mo was born in a demon clan. Anyway, he had been sleeping for 10,000 years and had no grievances against Jianqi Great Wall. He just didn't want to find a master. There is a sentence but the child did not say it. He has a master. Qin Pingon touched the child's head at the time and said that there is no need to force it. In the future you should be more diligent in sword practice. Don't just talk about it, don't squander your talent in sword practice and don't let your master down. There is also a pair of masters and apprentices who have been recorded on the genealogy of Luopusheng Patriarch's Hall, which is more festive. Yao Xianxia. The white-haired boy he. Master and disciple recognize each other, there is no twists and turns, it was probably such a picture at the time. Zhang Jiazhen, who has been planning to spend many years with Wei Wenlong on the Luopa mountain, will experience on the ferry in the future, and Feng Yuan has opened a separate account room for him. Still means Cui Dongshan. As for Jiang Chu, who is both a fellow villager and a fellow of his age, he has officially settled down on the Huimeng mountain. Jiang Chu has no clear ancestry for the time being. He is the only Fulu monk on the Luopa mountain who is the only upright Fulu monk. Jiang Chu will often fly. Jian Chuan believed that the chief worship of Yun Shangqing, and asked the real person Huan Yun about Fulu's knowledge. The hidden officer returned to his hometown this time and handed him a copy of the talisman's secret book. On the title page, the authentic pill book was written in regular script, and there was a smaller font at the end. Zhang Shanfeng did not follow Qin Pingon on a boat to Tongyi's Hao. He planned to travel to Aquarius Island alone, and he wanted to slay demons and slayers all the way. After all, he would not delay attending the next ceremony of Luopa Mountain. Qin Pingon didn't stop either. Anyway, Zhang Shanfeng Sr. was also one of the guests of Luopa Mountain. He pointed out that Xianfeng Yuan Lingdian was actually protecting the way for his juniors all the way. Qin Pingon knew about this before in Qinyuan County and he even specialized. I went to Yuan Lingdian for a drink. After the chat I realized that this true monarch had an opportunity to break the realm. Only when he returned to his hometown with Zhang Shanfeng, Yuan Lingdian would retreat and prepare to break the realm and become an immortal. In the conversation, Yuan Jinjuan looked quite contented about the fact that he snatched in from a few seniors this time. On the deck of the ferry there are only 2 floors and more than 40 rooms. Under there are 3 cabins for loading cargo. The members of the ferry are not complicated. The more than 60 talisman puppets and golden armored men carefully refined by Cui Dongshan are named Yugong, Jinshi, Taishanging, Moyuer, etc. Anyway, Qin Pingon is the number 1. I heard that they will be responsible for the daily repairs of the ferry and some secret geological surveys on the ferry route. I heard from Zhongqiu that these talisman puppets are added together, and the number is nearly 100 just like the talisman of the Yin and Yang family. Were thrown by Cui Dongshan into the mountains and rivers above Tongyi's Hao, looking for treasures everywhere. In addition, there are 2 earth fairy ghosts who are proficient in formations, both of whom are raw faces, and it is estimated that they will be included in the Patriarch's Hall by the next sect in the future. Since this windkite ferry is dedicated to trade routes, it does not earn money from the gods of the genealogy monks traveling in the mountains and water, and outsiders are not allowed to board the boat. Therefore, the 2-story idol house can also be used for storage as long as no one lives. Goods. Qin Pingon went straight to the cabin wanting to be familiar with the inside story of Fengyuan Ferris operation for the first time, especially to inspect those formation hubs. Zhongqiu walked at the front of the stairs to lead the way and introduced with a smile. For a transcontinental ferry, 3 things are the top priority: the speed of the wind, the degree of firmness, and the last is how much money is spent on each voyage. That is, how much spiritual energy is consumed. Not many. The 3 are interlinked. Any weak link may bring accidents and lose money. Cui Wei endured it, but after all she couldn't hold it back and said, "Master, the operating doorway of the intercontinental ferry, the hidden official has long been very familiar." At that time, Chun Banzai, the new hermit of the Jianqi Great Wall, who was said to be the subrudder entrance of the Summer Palace, did not rarely deal with the steward of the intercontinental ferry. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's still different. At that time it was more about account book transactions. It really involved the knowledge of the ferry itself. In fact, I don't know much about it. The more detailed the teacher said today, the better." Sailing speed. The major sects and ferry houses with ferry boats will have various auxiliary means. Just like the ferry boat of Pima Zone, there are a large number of talisman wrestlers towing the boat in the clouds, like a tracker dragging the boat as fast as thunder. Then a ferry, especially a transcontinental ferry, must be tough enough to withstand the wind, rain, lightning and thunder in the sky, and be able to withstand some natural disasters and man-made disasters. This requires the construction and engraving of a large number of landscape restrictions and talisman formations. Qin Pingon left the Luhua Island with 9 children at the beginning. Before meeting the female fairy Zhou Xian, he saw a transcontinental ferry to Tonggishao in the sea. The colorful clothes around the ferry were flying and the clothes were shaky. Such as flying in the sky, it's because there was an expert Fu Lu painted dragon girls and Narcissus on the wall of the ferry. In the world of Howren, the fairy from the Xian family, unable to pick up the sword of Dixian or Yupu realm sword fairy, are 2 thresholds which are touchstones. In addition, the fairy depletes the spirit and eats money. It is very particular. Just like the Osmanthus Island in the old Dragon City, although the speed is slow, it is unique in this matter. Because Mrs. Gui is sitting in the town, there is a laurel tree from the Pure Moon Palace in the middle of the island. Can be like a man of Taoism, absorbing the aura of heaven and earth on his own, so although Hohhot Island is not fast at sea, it costs very little money. On the other hand, this transcontinental ferry that I fished from the secret library of the Xianmi dynasty is sailing extremely fast. Otherwise, I am sorry for the name Feng Yuan, but the original 2 offensive and defensive formation hubs have long been abandoned, so Cui Dongshan had to do it. I did it myself and inlaid a lot of yellow and purple talismans. The basic technique is to imitate the continuous blessing of the stacks of talismans on the gate of the Dragon Tiger Mountain Heavenly Master Mansion. The defensive formation of Feng Kite is still only a rudimentary form. It's just this move the biggest advantage, similar to an endless array stacking. Only heard that Zhongqiu said that Cui Dongshan has already begun to draw the follow-up formation map, and will transform the Fengyuan ferry into a sword boat similar to that of the Dali army. It is obvious that Cui Dongshan intends to build this ferry into a mountain sect that can migrate around within 100 years. And for these precious talismans and treasures, Cui Dongshan did not ask for a snowflake money from the Luopashen treasury. Only in the matter of consuming aura, the Fengyuan ferry far exceeds the average level of the transcontinental ferry. Qin Pingon now doubts whether Yu Panshui is deliberately watching his own jokes. Without falling in one place, Qin Pingon followed Zhongqiu through the 3-story cabin and 2 of the formation centers. I came to a spacious house and there was a geomancy map of the mountains covering the Sanzhou Mountains and rivers. The mountains and rivers along the ferry were undulating, the rivers winding, and the hills of the Immortal mansions, which are distinct at a glance. The intercontinental route of the Fengyuan ferry generally belongs to the north-south line, the land of 3 continents and the northernmost ferry. It is the Daoist dynasty located in the middle of Jidu at Beiju Luzhou. In addition, there are Yunshangcheng, Skeleton Beach, etc. After crossing the sea, it's the northernmost Hengliangdu of Aquarius Island, the Changchun Palace in the land of Dali, the Nujiashan, Zhongyue, Nanyue, Lialongqing, Tonggishao. There are the Qinghu Palace in the north, the Daquan dynasty in the middle, further south is Yuguazong, and the southernmost mountain crossing of a continent. These are only relatively important mountain crossings. According to the display and labeling of this map, there will be more mountain crossings in the future. There are 17, but now nearly half of the ferry crossings are either too small in scale or dilapidated. For the time being, it is not suitable for Fengyuan ferry boats to stop for commerce and trade. Qin Pingon stretched out his fingers and gently held up the pocket-sized mountain named Saiji Mountain on the map. It was originally the size of a mustard seed. Suddenly, this mountain of Nanyue princes has a foundation as large as a tabletop. Qin Pingon was slightly focused on it. At first glance, the shrines and pavilions in the mountains, the pavilions and lofts, are all visible, and then gently press the virtual button. Saiji Mountain instantly restores its old style, gently waving the sleeve. A Saiji Mountain is like a ball of light being blown out of the map. Rely on when the wall hovered, Qin Pingon waved his hand again. Saiji Mountain returned to its original position, and then he clenched his fist and opened suddenly. Qin Pingon was like standing in a pavilion on the cliffside of Saiji Mountain, with pines next to it, rooted in the cliff wall. The branches slanted across the forehead of the pavilion, as if the scribes drew the eyebrows for a lady. There was still sunlight. Through the branches and leaves of the ancient pine, the pavilion was covered with golden fish scales. Qin Pingon puts his hands on his sleeves as if he is standing in the pavilion of Saiji Mountain, looking far away, wearing a green shirt covered in golden light. Putting away this landscape vision, Qin Pingon smiled to Zhongqiu. In the future we can treat guests here and invite people to drink tea and wine. The scenery is excellent. Anyway, you can shrink the mountains and rivers at will, and choose the location of the picture according to your preferences. The two 14-realm great monks have traveled far together. Xianxia smiled and nodded. Tui Wei looked stunned. A landscape map? Can you still play such tricks like this? This nascent soul realm sword repairer, after all, is a sincere person. Xianxia suddenly smiled and stretched out his hand to Tui Wei. Xianxia silently gave a small summer money. Planting the autumn to collect, Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Let's go back and invite Brother Tui to drink." Qin Pingan is a little confused. Xianxia explained, "Before I came here I bet on Tui Wei. I bet the owner of the mountain was on the Fengyuan ferry. The first thing was to walk around the cabin carefully. Tui Wei felt that the first thing that the owner of the mountain should do when he boarded the ship. It's to choose a place to live, get off the cabin and then just take a few casual glances." Qin Pingan said a small gambling which was good, and he said to Tui Wei in his heart, "You don't have to say it early, you should tell me when you just boarded the ship. I will definitely help you earn this little summer money, afterwards splitting the accounts. Regardless of whether we two make a big profit, it's better than you lose money." Tui Wei was speechless. He really can't do this kind of non-gambling activities. Tui Wei didn't believe in a rumor before, but now he has no doubts. There used to be a shop in his hometown with 10 alcoholics and 9 caregivers. Qin Pingan's 4 direct disciples, they are living in the same room and sitting on a table. Guizhuzhou still looks like a girl with one side hanging from the waist and holding the inkstone. She sits opposite Pei Qian. Long time no reunion, see you with pity and thinness. After Guizhuzhou arrived at Luopa Mountain, he did not hesitate to recognize Pei Qian as a senior sister, but he also recognized Zhou Xian as a senior brother and Zhao Wan as a senior sister. Zhao Wan was a little uneasy. Guizhuzhou gave a natural reason. "Zhao Wan, how beautiful you are, it would be a shame not to be a senior sister. As long as the hermit master does not formally accept the closed disciples for one day, then he will always be half of the closed disciples of the master, and there will be more and more senior sisters and brothers. The emperor favors Yaoer." Pei Qian asked some things about the colorful world, and then when she asked and then looked at the posture of Guizhuzhou, Pei Qian regretted his intestines. Because Guizhuzhou had already prepared, he first poured a bowl of tea for everyone, then took out a dozen pages of paper, coughed a few times and started to read. Zhao Xiao and Zhao Wan listened with gusto. After all, they are customs and strange things in a new world. I just waited until Guizhuzhou took out a pile of paper from his sleeve, drank water from a bowl in one hand, and shook his throat vigorously with the other hand, making a clatter. The 2 brothers and sisters suddenly understood the feelings of the master sister. Wait until the 2 brothers and sisters finally listened to an emotional storyteller. One said to practice boxing, the other said to spit out and slip away. This room is Pei Qian's residence and she can't hide. Guizhuzhou lay on the table and said that the small bamboo box was left at the summer palace, which was the treasure of the townhouse. She went back to Wuxia Tianli with Pei Qian and returned it to the master sister. Pei Qian put his cheek in one hand, looked out the window and said that there was no problem. Guizhuzhou's cheeks were pressed against the desk, looking at Pei Qian and curiously asked, "Pei Qian, your ball hair bun is usually numb and not troublesome to take care of. If it is not troublesome, I will tie it tomorrow." Pei Qian smiled and said, "It's very simple, I can teach you step by step." Guizhuzhou raised his head, then changed his cheek to stick to the table. "Pei Qian, I heard that there is a custom of making bridal chambers here. Can I hide under your bed then?" Pei Qian rolled his eyes and said, "I'm not married until you are married." Guizhuzhou snorted and blinked. "I heard Xiaomi Li said that you have made a big name in the arena. Tell me?" Pei Qian shook his head. "The millet grains add oil and vinegar to talk nonsense." I thought Guizhuzhou would continue to cause headaches, but I never thought that Pei Qian would soon hear the slight snoring and fell asleep. The ferry goes south. The moon springs from the big river and the canoe is dangerous. Looking up is the moon bowing to the world. Thousands of autumns and moons this night, the clear light of millions of homes. Lao Xianxia and Qin Lingjun, 2 brothers, are enjoying the moon and having a drink while talking. The old Daoist chief caressed his beard and groaned, "If you have the opportunity, you have to send a letter to Chief Zhou as soon as possible." Qin Lingjun questioned, "What are you doing? You are short of money and spent?" Turning back to Xianxia's accountant to pay memorial salaries, "You will take my share together. My money is my brother's money and my brother's money is wine money." The old Taoist leader sighed. If Brother Zhou does not come back, it is estimated that the position of the chief will not be guaranteed. Qin Lingjun suddenly realized, yes, our little Imo brother is indeed a fellow of old Brother Zhou, a strong enemy. The two brothers looked at each other and laughed loudly. It's no wonder that the two brothers don't talk about loyalty. It is really Xiao Imo who is too kind. Qin Pingon was more surprised because he saw Wei Xian's disciple so soon, a young girl who was less than 10 years old, whose surname was Chai and Wu. Wei Xian was about to rush to the barren world with a large elite frontier army. On the new and old Longqing side, he temporarily sent the little girl to the ferry, and also sent a letter to Chai Wu and asked her to hand it to Shan. Lord Qin Pingon. The little girl is delicate-looking, quiet and not short but slightly thinner than her peers. For some reason Qin Pingon always has an illusion that the girl in front of him at a young age looks like 4 words written on her face: I want a drink. Qin Pingon opened the envelope and after reading the contents of the letter, he felt that his illusion was justified. Wei Xian only said that Qin Pingon would help find a few masters and teach the little girl a few fairy skills on the mountain. It would be better if the mountain master was willing to preach by himself. Don't worry about what is greedy and can't chew. Whatever she teaches, she will learn what she learns. Whether she learns or not, it depends on her own destiny. Wei Xian had only one request. Chai Wu's fist and kick skills must be taught by himself as a master. At the end of the letter, Wei Xian also specifically mentioned that Chai Wu drinks every day, so don't treat him badly here. Not drinking for nothing, he will make up the money later. Talking to the host of the mountain, Qin Pingon, the little girl was not afraid of anything, sitting on a chair with her hands on her knees, neither restrained nor lazy. She is just like a little girl from the market who knows nothing about world affairs. Qin Pingon asked, she answered. Probably because of the thin body shape, it seems that the girl's eyes are especially big. Qin Pingon took out a jug of wine, handed it to Chai Wu and said with a smile, Your master said, you drink half a caddy of wine every day, remember to control the amount of alcohol. The little girl finally showed a shy look, smiled, a little embarrassed, and after taking over the hip flask she promised, only drink 2 bowls of wine for 2 wines, not half a caddy. According to Wei Xian's statement in the letter, Chai Wu drinks with him, which is very good. She usually drank half a caddy of shochu and she would vomit if she drank too much, but she could drink it after she vomited. A caddy of shochu could still be taken off without dizziness, but if she drank less she would be unhappy. Holding a hip flask she went to the door and the little girl turned her head and asked, Lord Shan, do you want to close the door? Qin Pingon smiled and said, whatever you want. The little girl helped close the door. Xiao Imo has been sitting at the table secretly observing Chai Wu. After the little girl closed the door and left, Xiao Imo opened the door and said, My son, I plan to strip out that natal flying sword and give it to Chai Wu. Xiao Imo added, Do this immediately. It is really this little girl named Chai Wu, who has a very good monastic aptitude. Even if I have seen countless Xiaomo on the top of the mountain, seeing Chai Wu for the first time is still amazed. It is simply a blessed fairy. God didn't say anything about the food and he was worried that Chai Wu would not have enough to eat, so he gave Chai Wu a big bowl. Generally, monks in the lower 5 realms to cultivate qi and want to absorb the spiritual aura of heaven and earth, they have to rely on a longevity bridge to connect the 2 heavens and earth, and then peel off the cocoon. It is quite difficult to distinguish the turbidity. In addition, it is necessary to open the natal acupuncture point, which is also a difficult task as a whole in the world of the human body. Xiao Imo is rare to be so determined and explained, presumably the sun has already seen it. Chai Wu draws spiritual energy and there is no obstacle. Even if she throws a pile of fairy money directly to her, she can eat everything without any loss. This kind of cultivating embryo, the sooner you practice the more money you spend the better. If it falls into the hands of Lu clan of Ai Aizhou, it is estimated that Chai Wu's place of cultivating will be in the treasury of the god of wealth. If Chai Wu obtains Xiaomo's flying sword, and then is successfully refined by her to become a life thing, the speed at which she can draw spiritual energy will be even more amazing, like a whale swallowing, like a dragon drawing water. Qin Pingon is a little embarrassed. Xiao Imo smiled and said, The sun has thought about it a lot, I just gave her a natal flying sword for nothing. I don't want any preaching name and I will never an apprentice from General Wei. If possible, I don't need to say that I gave it to the sun. The sooner the flying sword is given and the sooner it is refined, the greater the benefits of Chai Wu's avenue. Qin Pingon frowned and said, This is just one of them, and what about your realm cultivation? Even if Xiao Imo is absolutely sure that he doesn't need to fall, he will eventually damage his repair base, which will affect Xiao Mo's sword power. Just like the unintentional words of Xiaomi Li, it is not easy for anyone to make money in the world. The practice is even more so. Xiao Imo is not an ordinary heart and smiled, just like me. Yes, Jade Pu realm bottleneck, not an ordinary realm bottleneck. Xiao Mo's ascension realm reaches its peak, and it is also an extraordinary peak. Being in the world, Xiao Imo and his son have learned a lot, such as not being arrogant or arrogant. For example, when you are away from home, you are respectful when you fall down. It is the same truth to respect you at the wine table first. In fact, a little loss of cultivation base as far as Xiao Imo is concerned, it does not have a big impact. I really want to have a chance to pass the sword to life and death. It is nothing more than to sacrifice the flying sword of the winning hand. Therefore, the act of giving the sword is really not the little Mo Tuoda, who underestimated the killing power of the monk at the top of the mountain. Along with himself, the cultivating monk in the wild world is destined to not have a fuel-saving lamp. Xiao Imo is sure that he is not the one with the strongest power, nor the one with the strongest defense. But Xiao Imo can be sure of one thing: he is definitely one of the top 3 in offense and defense. Anyway, there is no need to go to the wild world to mix things up. And in this vast world, the mountain monks who can let Xiaomo divide life and death are not too many about the number of hands. What's more, quite a few have a good relationship with their own sons. For example, Beta Shengjing Juzhong Fu Lu Yushuan, Long Hushan Great Celestial Master Huolong Zhenren Lu Jubao. Qin Pingon asked sternly, Xiao Imo, are you really thinking about it? Xiao Imo nodded and said, then Mr. Lao will give this sword to him. Twisted 2 fingers as if holding something imaginarily, then a bright red color of sword swirling appeared like a fire dragon. Turned out to be the De Lien's natal flying sword, so it was pulled out by Xiao Imo from the natal acupuncture point, and finally condensed into a fiery red sword pill about 3 inches long. Qin Pingon couldn't help cursing, Xiao Ma you uncle. Jinxiu stripped his natal flying sword and hurt the root of Dao Dao. How could Xiao Imo take it lightly and improperly? Qin Pingon had to sacrifice the bird in the cage at the first time to help cover the sky. Otherwise, it is estimated that the entire wind kite fairy will be mistaken for the big monk's spell bombardment. Then Qin Pingon took out a locust wood sword box he made by himself, carefully put away the natal flying sword that has no name now, and smiled angrily. How can I give it to such a huge meeting gift? The little girl said about this. Let me think about it first. I must say it clearly. I have no face to be greedy and concealed. Xiao Imo rarely joked. You don't want to be greedy for ink. Qin Pingon stared at Xiao Imo. Who did he learn from? Before, Zhou Xian found himself in private and was full of praise for Xiao Imo. Because Xiao Imo said to him, in the falling mountains there are many innocent hearts, probably because of the red ones near Zhu. Xiao Imo smiled awkwardly. He really wasn't suitable for such frivolous chat. He still had to be a real person. It's not as good as learning from the son of a son to learn from anyone. You will get twice the result with half the effort. Qin Pingon thought for a while and said, Fijian's name is Xinhua. Passing the torch. I hope that Chai Wu will get this blessing and she can cherish it more on her practice road. If she encounters a similar fate in the future, she can continue to pass on this flying sword like today's Xiaomo. Xiao Imo smiled and said, I am a little longing for the future. The Fengyuan ferry stops at a Xinjia ferry port called Kuhulu near Zhongyue. It is named after 2 lakes connected by large and small lakes, shaped like a gourd. In fact, the lake is extremely clear. As for why there is a bitter word in the name, the mountain has never made a clear statement. At the ferry crossing, Shanjun Jinqing and a literary scholar in Qingshan stand side by side. In addition, there are Lu Baixiang and 2 disciples Yuan Baoyuan, who are also here waiting for the wind and kite ferry. It's just that there are many people in Huludu, and the 3 masters and apprentices have quietly boarded the ship. Lu Baixiang is now an enshrinement of a mountain of the prince in Zhongyue, and his disciple Yuan Lai once got a fairy fate in the mountain. With millet grains there would be no gossip that Qin Pingon did not know. So this time Yuan Bao went to Tongyi's house. When she saw Chao Sunny's first side, Qin Pingon had to take a look to see if the rumor was really true. Although Yuan Bai, one of the double walls of the old Zhuing swordsmanship, failed to leave Xingyang Mountain and followed Jinqing to Zhongyue to practice the Taoism. Instead he went to a place named Huangshan by the Xingyang Mountain Patriarch Hall and was responsible for the preparation of the Xingyang Mountain. Regarding the Xia sect of Yangshan, once the suffix of the alternate sect is removed, Yuan Bai will become the master of the sect, but the realm of Yuan Bai will probably stagnate in the Yuan Ying realm. This is also the peace of Xingyang Mountain, one of the roots of Yuan Bai's future affairs. But Jin Shanjun still reads the love of Qin Shanju very much, so he readily agreed to the Luopishen side. In the future, the cost of the wind and the kite will be 50% off. In fact, the last time Cui Dongshan took the ferry, he headed south to Tonggishao and stopped at the Bittergourd ferry. In fact, there was a sword repairer named Xiao Poxian on the ferry. Jin Qing did not meet with him when he boarded the ferry. But when the Dacian monarch got off the boat and returned to the temple, he stood at the door respectfully and said goodbye to the ferry that suddenly disappeared into the white clouds. Qin Pingon took Xiao Imo off the ferry, walked forward with a smile, clasped his fists and said, "I have seen King Jinshan Wu Juanshou." The scribe in Qingshan was an old acquaintance from his hometown. It was Wu Yuan. He had a dusty nose in Huaihuang County, Longzhou, and his career was full of soft nails left by the surnames of Taoye Alley on Fulu Street. Finally leaving Longzhou sadly, it was tantamount to being relegated to a small county at the foot of Zhongyue Mountain. Now he has become an official at the remote border of Dali. The official body is still the county guard. As a registered disciple of the national teacher Cui Huang, he is also Longzhou Huai Huangxian's first county magistrate. The promotion of official career, it is simply impossible to go high and low. From the perspective of the local officialdom, Wu Juanshou is at best going to accompany the capital's Shao Juking's office to find a spare job and stay there for retirement. Posthumous name? Chase it? Dreaming. But Qin Pingon knew that Wu Yuan would soon call back and he was promoted to the new governor of the old Longzhou and Xinchuzu. Jin Qing clasped his fists and laughed loudly, "I have seen Lord Qin Shan." Wu Yuanzhou returned the courtesy and smiled and said, "Wu Yuan pays homage to Master Qin." Was called Shao Shishu by Wu Yuan, which made Qin Pingon laugh dumbly. Qin Pingon came today to discuss the construction of a quarry, cutting wood and buying river sand. Of course they are not ordinary wood and stone. Only the ancient sandalwood in Zongyia's Prince's Mountain is unique in Baoping. Zhou's reputation is second only to Yuzhong Damu. It was the first choice for palace pillars and ceremonial ceremonies in central countries in the early years. The Zhou Ying dynasty set up a procurement office at the foot of the mountain, and it has been monopolized by the royal palace for mining. It is not sold by tree, but sold by the caddy every inch of gold. Previously, Cui Dongshan had negotiated with Jin Qing about his intentions, but failed to negotiate the price, so he had to let the husband go out in person. Almost everywhere in Tonggishao to the south are ruins, and the country is gradually being restored. There is a huge demand for the wood and stone sand from the Immortal family on the mountain. Of course there are also Tonggishao, which is vast and rich in resources, but it is not easy to mine. The family also needs to restore the Patriarch Hall. It must first rebuild its own fairy mansion. In addition, the fact that Tonggishao Mountain is wider than the mountain has become a common practice, vying to be the victim, even if the belt is tightened, or with people to borrow on credit. All imperial palaces and local cities must be built more magnificently than before the war. Xiao Imo was watching his son quietly, chatting and laughing with a mountain monarch and a county guard, and there was nothing to worry about the price, as if Shanjun Jinqing was just waiting for his son to show his face. The three things of quarrying, logging and riverbed digging of rock and sand, there is no need to send a supervisor on the Luopishen side. Jin Qing only reassures Qin Shanju that there is no need to lose his family for a few gods. Zongyia's face. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded and said yes. For no reason I thought of a Xianxia sect who might have been out of the house without turning over the almanac, and finally moved from the Beiyue boundary in Weibo to Zhongyue, and as a result he met Shanjun Jinqing and hosted a night outing. Is really an unexpected joy that can make your eyes full of tears. Wind Kite Ferry continues to travel south. Zhongqiu and Liu Baixiang, two fellow villagers from Fudi, they meet again after a long absence and they meet for a few games. Xiao Imo is watching the game from the sidelines, watching the chess without talking about the real gentleman. Stayed for a long time and heard the sound of chess pieces falling and there was a quiet sound. In a room, Yu slanted back to sit cross-legged, breathing out his sword, and Cui Wei was watching the flow of his disciple's qi, looking for subtle flaws. Pei Qian is on the stern side, teaching Zhao Xuxiao boxing. There is so little meaning to teach on behalf of teachers. Zhou Xian specializes in boxing practice, and only works the top of Xianxia boxing. Now it is the bottleneck of Wufu in the 5 realms. The realm is not low but not high. Is not low, it is relative to the average pure martial arts, not high, it is compared to the master's fall. Whether it is the predecessors Zhu Lian planting autumn Lu Baixiang Wei Xian or Pei Qian Xin Yuanji and Yuan Baoyuan from his peers, Zhou Xia's martial arts journey for so many years seems extremely ordinary and there is no suspense. Qualifications are at the bottom. Especially in the face of great Master Pei Qian, who is also a direct disciple of Master, Zhou Xian inevitably feels embarrassed. Teaching punches without feeding them is tantamount to be busy. Compared with each other, but Pei Qian's shot was very measured, whether it was a fist, an elbow or a kick, even if it was clicked it seemed like a dragonfly, but Pei Qian's pressure would still make Zhou Xian suffer. When Pei Qian stopped his fist, Zhou Xia's face was pale, his arms trembled and he was shaking. Both sides take a step back and hold their fists to each other. Pei Qian said softly, "Junior brother Zhou, your fists and feet are a bit rigid." The person who handed the fist dared to die, but the fist was not alive. After all, it was almost meaningless. After all, is the same school, so Pei Qian still restrained when speaking and used his words carefully so as not to hurt the self-esteem of this junior. Zhou Xian is not a stupid person. In fact, he knows the good intentions of senior sister Pei. Pei Qian fed him punches, it was a waste of her time. Pei Qian hesitated and said, "Junior brother Zhou, your boxing spirit is actually very good. You got the meaning of positive, so keep working hard." The 6-step walking pile under Zhao Shu has already walked well. But Wu Fu asked the boxing, after all it was not equal to the fight with the boxing method, so even if Zhao Xiu competed with the same realm Wu Fu, it was far from an advantage. It is even more extravagant to ask people to cross the border. But Pei Qian is puzzled. Why does Master seem to deliberately not teach Zhao Xiu some brilliant boxing techniques? Chai Wu finished drinking 2 bowls of wine today and stacked 2 white bowls on the table. The little girl belched a drink, began to practice, and continued to refine the flying sword named Xinhua. Before, the mountain master personally taught her a refining fairy tactic, but the knowledge is too advanced, the number of words is too many, and they are all unheard vocabulary. She is like drinking high dizzy. In the end, the mountain lord asked Mr. Xiao Mo, who gave the flying sword, to come over and chat with herself. After chatting for a while, she roughly understood it. Just use a snack to spread the breath like a spider web. The big deal is distraction at the same time. Take 7 or 8 roads and it will be done. Anyway, Mr. Xiao Mo said those routes truthfully. Someone helped to guide the way. Chai Wu just needs to do it. It's no different from learning origami at the Xiangju shop. Qin Pingon sat in Zhang Jiazhen's accountant. Nalan Jade Slip is here to help with the mess. The little girl sits on a chair, shaking her head, flipping the account book with one hand, and crackling with a small abacus in one hand. From Wei Wenlong to Zhang Jiazhen and then to Nalan Yubi, only Mr. Accountant Luopashan is indeed coming out in large numbers, and there is no worry about being unreliable. Qin Pingon rubbed his eyebrows with a look of helplessness. He had previously taught the little girl how to refine objects and repeated the formula twice. 1 question and 1 answer. Have you understood? Do not understand. Have you remembered the content? Can't remember. In the end, Qin Pingon could only move rescue soldiers and called for Xiao Mo to help preach for the little girl. Qin Pingon sat aside, watching Xiao Mo and Chai was questioning and nodding. The mountain owner was so shocked that he could only drink silently and was overwhelmed. Finally understand. Only cultivating geniuses and cultivating geniuses can talk. Just like Ning Yao taught Qin Pingon boxing in the early years, different positions just as helpless. Nalan Yudi asked curiously. His Lord Hidden Officer, the sandalwood on Zongyi's side takes up a lot of space, that's all. After all, sandalwood is valuable, but the 2 objects produced by the quarry and the riverbed are heavy and heavy. Occupying space, the price is also difficult to get up. The wind kite is a transcontinental ferry. Alas, the cost is too high to transport it all the way from the middle of Aquarius Chao to Tongye Chao. Will we lose money? Why not let the shorter distance turn over? Mo Ferry does this business? Qin Pingon smiled, turned his head and looked at Zhang Jiazhen. Jiazhen, you can help UD to explain the reason. Zhang Jiazhen said, today all countries in Tongyi's Hao are waiting to be thriving and everything is lacking, but the most urgent thing is definitely not the clean offerings, antique calligraphy and painting, but the civil reconstruction of the capital of a country, so we are not earning money at the moment, but a sum of money for the future. In addition, if we have a good relationship with those emperors and kings, establish long-term business relations and pave the way for Fengyuan Ferry, we will not worry about the opportunity to make big money in the future. We can even buy the useless things that Aquarius Island and Beiju Luzhou are willing to buy at a very low price from the generals of all countries at a very low price. Each has its own inclination. If you take these factors into account, you will find that this Zhongyue transaction between the Hermit Lord and Sect Master Cui is not only cost-effective, but also extremely profitable. Qin Pingon nodded and said, "That's exactly what happened. Real money is of course important for buying and selling, but at the same time, you also need to understand a truth. See big money outside the account books." Naylan Yu's eyes gleamed. Learned. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Finally, there is a shortage of gold and silver at the foot of the Tonggishao mountain, and a lack of money from the gods on the mountain. Therefore it is indispensable to borrow money to earn favor." Naylan Yugu asked, "Lending usury? Who dares not to repay the money? Let me Xianxia come to the door to cut people and chop his hands." Zhang Jiazhen actually wants to know the answer because nowadays, many forces from other continents are doing this kind of thing on Tonggishao, which is a hugely profitable business. Qin Pingon shook his head. "Everyone else does it, we don't do it." Naylan Yuzhu thought for a while and said anxiously, "Will the tree attract the wind? Will it arouse hatred and isolation?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "So I need me Xianxia to sit down in the house." Zhang Jiazhen suddenly stood up, straightened his clothes and clasped his fists silently with the hidden officer. "The monarch of a country and the gods on the mountain borrowed usury, how will it be repaid? Naturally, it is evenly distributed to the people." Qin Pingon double-clicked on Zhang Jiazhen and then began to read the ledger. "We will continue to do our own things. Some of the products in the blessed land of lotus root flowers, such as the beauty of the Fulu in the Fox Country, because now there is no fight between the three forces of the Fox Country, they are some old foxes who have died after the soldiers are disbanded. The number is rare but the ranks much higher. Moreover, Cui Dongshan mentioned something in the letter. By coincidence he found 3 monks from Shialu in Yezigang, Tonggishao. They were young, all over 100 years old when the Yezigang sect was destroyed. The 3 of them happened to be traveling abroad and they were lucky enough to escape, so that the beauty of Fulu in Shiala's crown was not cut off. Although the craftsmanship of these 3 disciples is much inferior to those of the 2 masters of Shi Corridor, the problem is not big. The 3 disciples only need to draw beauties. Cui Dongshan and the old cook can complete the final finishing touch. In addition, I only talk about purchasing porcelain made in the kilns of my hometown and small town, as well as cockfighting cups, lichens and other items that need to be negotiated in Tsai country. The specific quantity ratio needs to be detailed again and again according to the subsequent sales situation. Adjustments such as some goods that have high profits, but occupy a large area or are easy to accumulate goods. Qin Pingon is clear about these relatively trivial details. After all, on this matter in the account room of Chunban's High in Fallen Mountain, all of them are experts. Even the Mi Dajiangxian with the table by the door and the handle of the summer palace are not laymen. Doing business is actually 2 things: traversing the mountains and wading through the water. The so-called traversing mountains and ridges is nothing more than breaking the local trade barriers, and then testing the depth of the flow of money. There are also the rare books in Tonggishao that are scattered around. Qin Pingon has already seen it on the Kashandu side. There are also many noble official kills that were hailed as a daughter in the past. They are similar to those books. They are all sold in one sack and they are piled up everywhere at major ferry crossings and shops are not rare to bargain. However, this kind of missed opportunity in another 10 or 20 years at most, will surely gradually disappear and become the saying that the troubled time is golden and flourishing. In the early morning of this day, a red sun jumped out of the sea. The wind comes to the surface, sit and watch the clouds rise. The word lazy, the thief of standing. Zhao Xian was walking 6 steps in the house and suddenly there was a knock on the door, and when he opened the door it was Master. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Go walk with me." The master and apprentice went to the bow together. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "For so many years apart from shaking mountain fist, I haven't taught you more fist moves. I will make up today." Qin Pingon today taught Zhang Shanfeng's own set of boxing techniques. Zhao Xian still has to learn something, but it is a pity that he has learned something that resembles a god. Qin Pingon helped to check the missing and fill in the vacancies. Zhou Xian looked guilty and whispered, Master, I have poor qualifications and I am embarrassed. Is in the Luopa mountain, otherwise it will be placed on any mountain fairy house or Jianghu martial arts. There must be a few gossips or playful sight. On the side of Luopa mountain no one chewed their tongues behind their backs because they were all told in person, such as Qin Lingjun and Bai Xian. Every time they met, the boy in Tsing Yi who likes to throw his sleeves and crackle would have a few old-fashioned warnings. Under the tree you can't be slacking about practicing boxing. Look at us, Pei Qian, that realm is whoosh, it's no problem, I'm going to teach you a few masterpieces today. Centipede jumps, don't know, optimistic. As for Bai Xian Zhao, every time he passed by the pavilion stall under the tree, Bai Xian would greet him to go in and sit down for a cup of tea. Disappointed, don't be stunned, drink tea and drink tea. My tea is similar to the drink in the shop in the hometown of Master Hermit, and it can raise the realm after drinking. Actually, the two uncles Qin Lingjun and Bai Xian made such a fuss, which made Zhao Xiao feel a lot better instead of being so anxious when practicing boxing. Qin Ping angrily smiled and said, What kind of things are you talking about? Patted Zhao Xu's shoulder again. You don't need to believe in your martial arts talent, but you must believe in the eyes of master accepting apprentices. Saiji Mountains, what you do? The wind and kite fairy is anchored here. It is no coincidence that a book is made. The pavilion is the place where Shanjun Fan Junmao and the Shanshan Wangwan entertain guests. Qin Ping took Xiao Mo, Qin Lingjun and old God Jia settled down here. The old Nanyue of Dei, which was once made of genuine goods, was built on the ground, and now the new Nanyue is exactly the same. Led by the Dali dynasty, dozens of large and small countries around the old Nanyue site worked together to facilitate this matter. After all, a large mountain was needed to help stabilize the transportation of mountains and rivers in the south of a continent. However, since ancient times, there has been an unwritten and exquisite, change the capital without changing the 5 sacred mountains. One continent is the Great Li dynasty of one country. After losing half of the mountains and rivers, a compromise was taken. One continent and 5 sacred mountains remained the same. Whoever went to worship in the territory of the country. So now Nanyue Fan Junmao became the first and only Daoist mountain monarch to break away from the jurisdiction of the Song clan of Dei. In Fan Junmao's words, it's just one word, cool. After a great battle, in fact the entire Nanyue was destroyed by half and then half was evacuated. Among the several mountains of the Prince of Nanyue, only Tsaiji Mountain was lucky enough to save most of it, as the temporary Immortal ferry crossing set up by the monster army. First, as a result, Tsaiji Mountain, as one of the few mountains in the southern part of Aquarius, has become more and more under one mountain and above 10,000 mountains. On the side of the pavilion, Fan Junmao in a dark green robe sat cross-legged and saw Qin Pingon and his party. He just raised his hands and clasped his fists to make a point. The Mountain King's family members of Tsaiji Mountain are luxurious attire with a crown on their heads and purple-clothed elephants. The crown is decorated with orbs which are as big as green plums. At first glance they are a treasure on the mountain. If ordinary people don't know the truth and see these two at first sight, they will definitely mistake Wang Chuan as Daoist mountain monarch, and Fan Junmao is just a female deity at the temple. Wang Wan also participated in the ceremony at Xingyang Mountain and stayed at Boyun Peak. At that time the gods of the mountains gathered together and confronted the water gods' banquet at the neighboring peak. At that time on the side of Shanzu Mountain in Xingyang, the flying sword was spreading like a flower, and Wang Jun received a secret letter from Qin Pingon, and also received a seal-carved Great Blue Rain Phase jade plate, which was handed over to Fan Shanjun. Getting the reminder at the end of the secret letter, Wang Wan left Xingyang Mountain quickly. Fan Junmao leaned against the railing and said straightforwardly, "Let's talk about it. How can I repay this kindness?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's really not a debt collection, it's just a recollection of the past. After the big deal at the transition of the ferry road, you Mountain Monarch and King Mountain God just take care of them." Fan Junmao said, "Don't come to this set. If you don't come to look for me, I will look for you too. After all, there must be a charter. I don't want to be distracted to snap off a ferry for 100 years and 1,000 years, and there is no end to the bastard." Qin Pingon nodded and said, "Then I will open the skylight to speak brightly. As long as all the treasures of the heavens, materials and earth within the jurisdiction of the gods in Nanyue are peddled and willing to buy and sell, I will score a share in the Lost Mountain, at least 30%, and must the price is fair, starting with the lowest market price." Fan Junmao waved his hand. It's settled. Even if you drink, I will stay at my next night banquet on the mountain and it will be enough. Once Fan Junmao enters the Yupu realm, you have to organize night banquets as usual. Qin Pingon smiled and said, there is one more thing to ask. I want to ask Wang Shanshan to buy the secluded soil of Xishan, about 3,000 caddies. Of course, the more the better the price. The secluded soil of Tsaiji Mountain is a kind of Wanyan soil. It is extremely famous in Aquarius Island. It is the foundation stone for the heroic and feminine to open up the small world of the Daoist temple. Therefore, when the king's golden body lord evacuated Tsaiji Mountain, the Dai dynasty specially helped to relocate all the secluded soil, and never left it to the monster army. Fan Junmao wanted to wave his hand again. Wang Wan hurriedly reminded him in his heart. Mr. Fan Shan, the secluded soil of Tsaiji Mountain, the Song clan of Dai has successively taken away half of it in the previous years, and now there is not much left. I only have 20,000 caddies on my side. Mr. Fan Shan, it is clear that if this secluded soil is less than 10,000 caddies in size, it will not become a climate. It is extremely difficult to cultivate new soil, but it may decrease year by year. Fan Junmao hesitated for a while, still waved his big hand and said to Qin Pingon, I still have 10,000 caddies over there. Take them all. There is nothing that is not priceless. No matter how precious the soil is, it can't compare to that jade metal. This thing is exactly the opportunity for Fan Junmao to re-enter the jade realm. Wang Wan returned to Tsaiji Mountain earlier and immediately donated 10,000 caddies of secluded soil to Nanyue. In fact, a few years ago the prince of Tsaiji Mountain was very embarrassed because after a great battle, Nanyue was completely defeated, and there was a pattern of the great prince Xianxia which made the king's golden figure rank. After returning to the nascent soul realm, I didn't dare to hold a night banquet. Otherwise, the promotion of rank would be a trivial matter for a great mountain crown prince. Can only wait for Shanjun Fan Junmao to restore his realm, and then hold a night banquet together. Fortunately, Fan Shanjun will be able to return to Yupu soon. Qin Pingon looked down on the realm of monks anymore and couldn't help but envy a little. These prominent 5 sacred spirits really didn't need to practice much. Fan Junmao didn't give Qin Pingon a chance to say anything polite and asked, You and Wei Bo wear a pair of trousers, so I also have something to beg of you. Please Beiyue send some familiar servants and maids to Nanyue. That night banquet was the first time the elder girl got on the sedan chair. Could not be done too badly. This kind of thing is Beiyu's most experienced and recognized by Izhou. Qin Pingon, this kind of thing will never be embarrassing. Right? It's really not Fan Junmao's joking. The Immortal family celebration is the most troublesome. The genealogical master and the landscape gods, as well as the seat arrangement of Xiang Gongqing, the place to stay, the drinks, fruits and vegetables, are a mess of trivial matters. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded and agreed, this kind of thing is not difficult at all. We Wei Shanjun are first-class experts. Fan Junmao glanced at the blind old Taoist man in fancy dress, turned his head and said to the mountain Tsaiji, In the future, you will have a lot of exchanges with the second manager of the Wind Kite Ferry. Wang Wan nodded with a smile. As for the 10,000 jin of secluded soil that Fan Shanjun sent out today, there is no big problem. When Nanyue holds a night banquet celebration, another 10,000 jin will be sent out from Tsaiji Mountain. Fan Junmao then stubbornly accompanies Qin Pingon and the others to climb the mountain and explore the scenery. The old Jia and the king of the mountain have a very happy conversation. Reconstruction of the old Dragon City ruins. The reconstruction is in full swing, and there are huge constructions and dust everywhere. Qin Pingon, Sun Jiashu and Dong Shuijing met on the shore of the sea. In addition to Xiao Mo, there is also Mi de Jianxian who rarely appears outside the ferry. After talking about the business, it is of course the old rules to pull them into the group and make money across continents together. There used to be a lotus pond here. This is the first time Miyu has set foot on land in the awe-inspiring world. The scenery he saw at first glance is especially impressive. Miyu tentatively asked, Can you plant 10-mile lotus again? Sun Jiashu nodded and said yes, but Miyu was shocked when he heard the amount of money from the gods. It was far more than his own estimate and suddenly no idea of borrowing money from the hermit. Sun Jiashu explained with a smile, It's not unusual to plant lotus on the sea. The lotus is planted by the immortals. It costs more to maintain it. In the past it was all taken the lead by the Fu family, and the rest of the families contributed money together, which is a facade for spending money to earn a face. Miu sighed, money is a heroic courage and there are really not a lot of fairy money in his pocket, so don't swell your face and fill you up. Qin Pingon smiled and said, we are ready to pay this money. Miu was a little embarrassed and immediately said in his heart, his nobleman, goodbye, I just said casually, don't spend this injustice. Sun Jiaxu nodded and smiled. The two things of buying lotus and lotus can be paid by me Xian. After that, the old and new Longqing surnames will be responsible for the maintenance. I will help find someone to discuss the matter. I believe there will be nothing. Objection. The rice from the Great Wall of Jinchi wants to plant lotus flowers here and rebuild the fairy ruins. Who would dare to say nothing about the walls and grasses in the old dragon city except the Fu family? At that time, it is estimated that the old dragon city will have to erect a monument to record the matter, Ziren Miu. Sun Jiaxu knows Qin Shan's his intentions. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone, letting his second seat enshrine Miu fulfill his wish, and at the same time it was considered a small favor to the Sun family. Nowadays several big families have their own backers. Unlike the previous Fu family, they are all attached to the officialdom of the Dali court. Therefore the intrigue between each other is intensified. Sun Jiaxu raised this matter and can help. Save a lot of trouble for your own family. The truth couldn't be simpler. Now the mountain ally of the Sun family is the Luopa mountain. In the past few years, the Sun family has always been in possession of the partnership with Luopa Shan, but now it is no longer needed. A ferry across continents. The vast sea between the 2 continents is a battlefield. Thousands of miles away from the land on the sea surface. From time to time there will be monks who use water-saving techniques and enter the sea to salvage magic weapons. Before this matter was banned by the Dali dynasty, the court specially sent a group of monks with the army and Mr. Qinggu to search for the treasures left in the sea. Any harvest must be confiscated from the Song clan's treasury. The ban was just lifted not long ago. There were hundreds of monks from Ayo Pingzhou and Tong Yizhou. They moved by the wind and swarmed, and there were many well-informed people who had been lying on the old Dragon City ruins. Im dead, although im destined to not pick up the big leak after all, it has been repeatedly searched by the Dali monk, but after Dallas ban many people have already made a fortune. The old Longqing surnames have special monks to buy such treasures. And sold it casually and made a lot of money. Miu subconsciously turned his head and glanced at the hidden officer next to him. The true master of this kind of activity is standing by his side. Those gas trainers who try their luck to pick up the rags have to recognize an ancestor if they come here first to give a sage. Maybe they will have some unexpected gains. Sir Yingguan immediately squinted his eyes. Mi Jianxian looked sad. There were a few monks in the sea. They saw the Fengyuan ferry boat and hurried to Yufeng. It was a group of monks from Tonggishao. They really made money here, so they wanted to take the boat back to their hometown. Otherwise, Yufeng crossed the sea, it was too hard and there were many accidents. The monk spoke, but it was Aquarius Yayan, which is Dali Mandarin. No way, it's different now. If you don't speak this Dali Mandarin, you won't be able to mix up here at Old Dragon City. I heard that it was a private ferry from Luopa Mountain. Don't say anything offends, say goodbye. Chen Lingjun saw the scene and laughed loudly. Hey, he laughed so much that his stomach hurts. The shadow of the famous Tree of Man. A mountain sect who likes to demolish people's ancestors' hall, is aptly called to watch the ceremony and congratulate, but it is actually a domineering questioning sword. The only one in Beipingzu, it is no different from that of Beiju Luzhou. Qingjian's family sect, this seems to be the first case in the history of Aquarius. Above this sea, if you can't reach the village before and the shop, you still take a boat? Take the initiative to board the thief boat and enter the bandits' den, isn't it? Be careful to board the ship but not to disembark. This made the old fairy Jia, who was useless, both gratified and regrettable. Fortunately, the prestigious broadcast of his own mountain gate. Unfortunately, the other party did not understand his own hospitality. The outline of the land of Tonggishao can be seen vaguely by Fengyuan ferry. Soon in one night, the ferry arrived at the Qingjingshan ferry in the north of Yizhou. Chen Pingon took Pei Qian and his party to visit the Qinghu Palace on Tianke Peak. Previously, the Ancestor Hall was moved to Beipingzu, and the old Yuan Ing Lu Yong became the second-class worship of the Dai dynasty. Legend has it that it has a close relationship with Song Mu, the king of the Dai domain, and has a personal friendship. Last time Qin Pingon gave the stamp of Qingjing as the bottom of one party. The old sovereign Jiang of Yuguazong and the chief Zhou of Luopashan also sent a word from the old god. There is a Lu Yong in Tongyi's Hao, which is equivalent to adding a sect that stands tall in the eyes of the monks in Haoren. After that, Lu Yong picked a good time and consumed a portion of Qingjing Mountain's natural luck. In the end his luck was quite good. He successfully made 2 furnaces of Zhuangdan and gave it to Yi Yunyun's Pu Shanyan. In Chaotang the old Zhenren made an exception and did not hide privately. He never secretly ignorant 2 or 3 tablets in accordance with the old rules. In fact, Yi Yunyun, according to expectations, was able to spend a lot of money to buy a stove, which was considered a great surprise. As a result, 2 furnaces were given away for nothing, and she was a direct disciple of the master of the Qinghu Palace. She personally sent it to the Pu Shangyun thatched cottage. Yi Yunyun, who has never liked to treat people, treats guests personally. This woman is a martial artist who wants to follow that in advance. It was the agreement of a Master Chow to buy the priceless Hei Maru of these 2 furnaces at the market price on the mountain. Unexpectedly, the Jindan Daoist of the Blue Tiger Palace insisted not to collect any money, and regardless of what this female master who was known as Huang Yiyun was a martial artist, the Taoist just insisted on one thing: either Pushan thatched cottage was taken for nothing or he brought it with him. Back. Anyways, Zhuangdan from Qinghu Palace, I really don't have to worry about selling it. It can be worthy of the saying, the only one in the world, but it is hard to find. This pill is extremely difficult to make, because in addition to the secret technique of alchemy from the teacher in the Qinghu Palace, there are also vital materials for blind alchemy. It is the unique mountain and water aura of Qingjing Mountain, so it is a panacea that Ijo Dixian dreamed of in the past years. Otherwise it would not be the queen gift of Tongyi's Hao Patriarch Hall. Each time Lu Yong succeeded in alchemy in his early years, he would deliberately knock off 1 or 2 pills and give them to Taiping Mountain for nothing. Anyway, the number of pills for a furnace ordered by those sects has never been fixed. Selling to the major sects on a continent, that is to make money plus the love of earning incense. Bailey gift to Taiping Mountain, that is the chivalrous wind of admiring the heavenly monarch and the mountain lord. Because of an old grudge, Lu Yong was recognized as the most disgusting land among the monks of the continent. That's why Yi Yunyun was so surprised. Qin Pingon today recounted the past with the old gods. He was a little embarrassed. Brother Lu, I may need to book a meal with you and forget it. It will be fine within 10 years. Because this pill can help chi practitioners warm up their minds, sort out and remove various subtle hidden dangers in the human body. And for Qin Pingon, who is now in a terrible fall, sitting in the Green Tiger Palace with the forget pill is just the right medicine, so it may be compared any rare pill will have a timely reign. It's definitely not the icing on the cake, it's a veritable gift in the snow. Otherwise Qin Pingon really couldn't open this mouth. One continent, Yuguazong, Xialongqiu, Jindingguan, Daquan Dynasty etc. all sought pill. Not to mention the Aquarius Island in the north, as well as the residences of the kings of Dali, the Taoist temples of the gods, the old Longqing Fu family and the immortal Chao Rong. According to the established arrangement, let alone 100 or 200 years, Lu Yong will not be free for 300 years. But Lu Yong smiled heartily. It's not a coincidence, there are still a few pieces left in the hands of poor Dao, so I will take it to Brother Chen. It was originally intended to be given to a few direct and repassed disciples as a gift for the opening of the peak in the future. In the past few years I followed myself all the way and worked hard. In Aquarius Island, from beginning to end, when I first encountered difficulties I lost my eyes. When the matter of making alchemy for the Dalibian army free of charge, Feng Shui turned around and became highly respected. Many Aquarius Island immortal palaces and Qinghu Palace passed or implied or explicitly stated that they wanted to recruit them and change their divisions, but they never had anything. One wants to leave the Qinghu Palace Patriarch Hall's genealogy. Knowing that young Master Chen himself wanted to take Wangdan, the last time he gave 2 stoves to Yi Yunyun for free he was not so sincere. As soon as Qin Pingon was about to speak, the old man raised his palm and complained, "Stop, if I see foreign words I will stop mentioning it. It hurts his family's friendship in vain." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "If you have any needs for the reconstruction of the Green Tiger Palace, Brother Lu can just make a list and Feng Kite Fairy can help buy it. This transaction has the purpose of not losing money or making money." Lu Yong laughed and said, "Only this matter involves the face of the teacher, I will not be polite with Brother Chen." Then Lu Yong took the initiative to invite Luopishan and his party to go out to enjoy the scenery. Twilight Autumn Mountain Trip. The sky is wind and the moon is dazzling and the sound of lingling jade chime. A group of people went down the mountain to board the boat, and the ferry continued south. Finally, I arrived at the next sect that Cui Dongshan personally chose. Cui Dongshan Chao Sunny. On the right of Sui, the little cook Qing Chao Lu, Xiaopoxi and Menglong Shiqiu have been waiting here for a long time at the ferry. Near there are also a large group of talismans puppets, and they are working tirelessly to expand the ferry. The name of Xiazong is still up in the air. And Cui Dongshan chose this place. It is not a land of landscapes, but it occupies an area of 600 miles, located on the border between the two countries. There are no landscape gods around. The nearest one is a temple with 1,000 years of history, Yuhang County Guide. It seems that Cui Dongshan deliberately chose a poor place. He wants to start from scratch. Cui Dongshan became more determined after receiving the reminder from the letter sent by Mr. Gott from Dali Capital, because at the beginning, according to the deduction plan of this pair of students and Chief Shou, the next site was chosen to disrupt the Jinding Temple 7th. The twofold plan of now too hidden not only wanted to keep the incense of Taiping Mountain where no one was in the world, and not to be occupied by Xiaolongqiu, but also to prevent the alliance between Jindingwen and Qinghu Palace as much as possible. It's just that the former is a top priority while the latter is optional. There is a huge collection of books in the Summer Palace, among which there are 24 volumes of Taoist Yunji 7 signs, and among them are the Sun, Moon and Stars department. A Taoist temple on the hilltop is just a candidate for the sect. Du Hanliang is just the master of a monk in the nascent soul realm. Once the formation of the Big Dipper, Jiasuk and Bielyang is completed, the Golden Summit view is equivalent to covering a small half of Tonggis's astronomical geography and landscape. But since there was a plan by the Lu family of the Middle-earth Yin and Yang family, Cui Dongshan simply gave up the plan to stalk from it. He wanted to take a good look at it. The Golden Summit views of Taiping Mountain and Qingjing Mountain were no longer there. Du Hanliang in the end can toss out a magnificent Dharma heaven and earth. Two groups of people meet. The young man in white clothes with a red mole on the eyebrows and chin pin gone touched to the bottom. After getting up he bent over again, raised his head and smiled, sincerely thanked Xiaomo for offering it. Xiaomo made a polite return. Xiaomo has seen sect master Cui. Everyone walked to a high mountain together and Qin Pingon chatted with Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "On the Golden Summit view, you can't be said to be careless. I don't have any thoughts about Taiping Mountain and Qinghu Palace. I closed it very quickly. Only a little dragon is left. I don't know the seriousness of the stakes and continue thinking of gathering the remnants of Taoist rhyme near Taiping Mountain and refining it into the moon mirror passed down by the Taiping Mountain ancestors." As a result, Huang Ting returned from the colorful world inexplicably and asked the sword for a round. The Patriarch Hall was demolished. The female crown sister, I didn't stop, I actually lived next to the ruins of the Patriarch Hall. Huang Ting, the female champion of Taiping Mountain, actually came down from the colorful sky to the Howren world together with Guizhujiu. Only one went to Aquarius Island and the other returned to his hometown of Tonggis Hao. Qin Pingon laughed at himself. I was the one who frightened the snake. Before Qin Pingon went to Taiping Mountain, he started to make a lot of noise and made a secret affair. He killed Han Yushu, the lord of the Wanyao sect in Sanshan Blessed Land. After that I went to the Green Tiger Palace with Jiang Shangzhen. Du Hanliang must have received the news. After weighing the pros and cons, Jin Dingguan could only retreat to the second place, greatly reducing the rank of the great array of Fatian elephant in earth. If you put aside the foregone conclusion of the hostile relationship, Du Hanliang really can be called a hero. The Daquan dynasty's Peach Leaf Alliance, Jinding Temple in the north, Bailong Cave in the middle, and Pushun Thatched Cottage in the south were all sponsors. In the end, a total of 16 immortal houses on the mountain dominated the Tongya Island. The 34 vassal powers of the upper vassal have jointly concluded an alliance and jointly confronted the forces of other continents in name. Because Yi Yunyun didn't care but just wore a virtual title, Jindingwen and Beilongdong. After the Peach and Leaf Alliance, the two immortals were hailed as the monarch on the mountain and the prime minister in the mountain respectively. Cui Dongshan stood at the foot of the mountain, pointed a finger and said, "Sir, you must wait for you to come here before you can erect the mountain gate. You may need to cut the ribbon at that time. Qin Pingon couldn't laugh or cry, and Luopishan didn't have such trouble back then. Qin Pingon suddenly said, "The next celebration will be the day of the beginning of spring next year." Cui Dongshan gave a hum. Beginning of spring, the beginning of the 4 o'clock, the head of 1 year old, the rising of Yangqi, and the beginning of all things. Cui Dongshan whispered, "Sir, it's like hanging images. How do you say it? Who can I paint?" Because it is the next sect, so when hanging a statue in the ancestor hall, you have to start hanging the portrait of the ancestor Zonkai in accordance with the rules of the mountain. And it must be suspended in the center. Qin Pingon was a little helpless, looking at Cui Dongshan. "Can we really make an exception?" Cui Dongshan shook his head vigorously, categorically saying, "Sir, really can't make an exception." Sword of Coming Chapter 891. Qin Pingon deliberately chose Li Dong's day, and the ferry docked for the next sect. Cui Dongshan built a few huts at the gate of the mountain, moved out a few tables and went up and down 2 cases. There were a lot of people. A shopkeeper busy with shirtyu over the stove in the beginning of winter. A bowl of dumplings, a bowl of tonic soup, also known as ground root soup, is made from the roots of various plants, which is auspicious. The nearby materials are not some immortal products. On each table there is a dish of soy and vinegar condiments, and a large dish of pickled isatis when the frost is falling. As for the drinks, I'm sorry, if you want to drink it you can change it yourself. Our next sect is now too poor. There were 5 people sitting on a main table. Qin Pingon, the owner of Shangzong's Luopa Mountain. Daohao Lingchun's down-and-out mountain palm law is long-lived. There are also the 3 largest temporary officials of the next sect. The first Lord Cui Dongshan, who is in charge of the autumn planting, and the next sect is in charge of Cui Wei. Cui Wei was originally unwilling to sit at the main table and wanted to give up his position to Miyu, who was about to serve as the chief priest of the next sect. But Lord Shanju took his arm and did not let go. Cui Wei had to admit his fate. Zhou Xian, who was sitting at the other table, looked back at Cui Wei and the child pouted. He was able to drink at the same table with the hermit. It's not a rare thing on the Great Wall of Jianqi, but there are not many when it comes to Haoran. However, Yu Xiaohui seemed to be in a better mood, took a chopstick dumpling and took a big mouthful of tonic soup. Cui Wei was keenly aware of this slight change in the direct disciple, and looked at the young hermit with a rare smile. Qin Pingon nodded in greeting, trifling. Which child in the world would not want his father or master to be an indomitable husband who has a card when he goes out? Qin Pingan's direct disciple sat at a table, but it was actually more than Chao Sunny on the previous ferry. Cui Dongshan took the last seat, clasped his fist and said, "Inherit Xingxua, General Affairs, Initial Creation, Lack of Characters and Creation of the Night." Qin Lingjun asked softly, "Meet Sishi, what do you mean?" Miyu asked back, "Ask me? What do you mean?" The 2 jokes stared at each other with big eyes. The old fairy Jia on the side said with a smile, "The general idea of sect Master Cui is that this sect is inherited from the previous sect, that is, the orthodox origin of the Luopa Mountain incense. It is now in the early stage of preparations. There are not many people and poor materials. It's hard to avoid being sloppy. I hope you can forgive me." Naturally, our sovereign Cui said that he was too self-effacing. He only talked about the pickled winter cabbage on the table and the royal kitchen craftsmanship in the palace, but that's it. Miyu asked curiously, "Brother Jia, have you been in the palace?" Qin Lingjun grinned. Mi Dajiangxian asked this question well. Jia Xing smiled and said, "A good guy doesn't mention the courage of the past, and it doesn't matter if you don't talk about it, let alone the past of the poor Dao, to say it will only laugh generously." Qin Lingjun chuckled and said, "When Brother Jia was young, he was a gentleman with a reputation for imperial examinations. He was a jinsher master who had eaten the Qianglin banquet. He also published poetry collections. Later he abandoned his pen to join the army and joined the army. Xingwu spent many years on the battlefield and made great achievements. According to Chief Zhou, he can get a good posthumous post. It is just that Jia waited until the world was peaceful at the foot of the mountain, and he had met the emperor, so he didn't have anything. Yes, I hid my merits and fame deeply and traveled everywhere, and later I received 2 high disciples, Deng Gao and Jiur, and met our master at first sight, and became the worship master of Luopa Mountain." Jiaxing laughed and said, "It was revealed that Mi Cishi laughed." Qin Pingon turned his head and smiled and asked, "Jia Zhufeng and these vulgar past deeds? Why haven't I heard you say it before?" Old Immortal Jia hurriedly held a bowl in both hands, replacing the wine with soup. I don't have the shame to brag about the merits on the side of the mountain owner, and the ugliness of the family should not be exposed. This shows how suspicious the owner of his own mountain is not to use, and to employ people without any doubt. What a not tacky. The comment of the mountain owner is very sophisticated with a few words, which is better than 1,000 words of flowers. Qin Pingon turned his head and glanced at the mountain road. It was vaguely visible that it was the Shinto form of burning incense and respect, and asked, "The predecessor of the mountain under our feet is the site of the 5 sacred mountains of a certain country?" Cui Dongshan nodded and smiled. Mr. has eyes like torches. It is indeed the students who had spent a lot of effort to relocate this mountain all the way. The mountain is very sinking. The top of the mountain is the old Nanyue of the old northern Jin kingdom. The temple and the golden body of the gods are no longer there. They were defeated by the monsters in that battle, and the land was ruined by the wild world, and there was no precious treasure left in the mountains, so now there are only leftovers. I'm so empty and want to return to the mountainous style of the past. I have no other choice but to spend money and then spend money. This is also the reason why the new emperor of the Northern Jin dynasty made his move so quickly. I happened to pass by this mountain at the time and felt that I had a good eye for it. Later I asked De Kuan Yao to help match the bridge. Li Shiling Li, who is the uncle of today's son, worked hard. Personally accompanied me to the Beijing capital of the Northern Jin dynasty. Cost me 50 grains of rain. The new monarch was generous, suggesting whether I would be willing to round up the old 5 mountains, and the 200 grains of rain would be able to buy all of it. I was almost moved. It's similar to the original dragon boat in Luapa Mountain. Instead of spending great effort and money to repair it, it's actually better to buy a new ferry. For the new imperial court of the Northern Jin dynasty, who wanted to restore the old appearance of a mountain with broken roots and exhausted water transportation, it was a bottomless pit that would cost a lot of money, so it was not a general taste. If you don't change the yu, it is a dead rule after all. It is better to Fengchan Xian Yu. It is also a new dynasty. Regarding the site selection of the Northern Jin Kingdom's Xinyue Mountain, not only has it been reported to Dafu Academy, but it has also been approved by the Zhongtu Confucian Temple. This means that the Confucian Temple in this matter is equivalent to opening a hole for the entire Tonghishao countries. Since there is a precedent, the rest of the countries will become polite. It's just that the next sect site is just that big. If it is installed with the 5 sacred mountains of the next country, it will look bloated and overcrowded. As an additional condition for buying the old mountain, because the price is indeed lower, I have to agree to the new gentleman. In the next 100 years, our next ancestor is willing to give priority to accepting the cultivating embryos of the Northern Jin Kingdom. His Majesty is not very young and has a lot of courage. He is very sophisticated when it comes to buying and selling. He is either a born businessman or a man. The expert taught me tricks and tricks. Anyway, I'm asking for the price to pay back the money. I only promised an additional condition of, within 500 years, at least 3 to 5 disciples of the Patriarch's Hall in the Northern Jin dynasty. The exchange, except for the renovation of the old state city in the future of the Northern Jin Kingdom and the construction of the Xinzhou city, is handed over to our next case. The price is fair and everyone needs what they need. Everyone is happy. In addition, it gave us a century of mining all silver mines in the Northern Jin dynasty. Quan, we contribute. The Northern Jin dynasty just sits and collects the money. September 1st opens. Hearing this, Qin Pingon finally interrupted. It's too much to divide the accounts like this. If it is the next sect that divides the account by 90%, of course it is too much. If the next sect only accounts for 10%, the Northern Jin dynasty is too much. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "The students also want to talk about 2 to 8, but the new king is very shrewd and prepared early. The approximate reserves of the 6 silver mines in the dark and secret mountains have been carefully estimated by the Beijing Household Department. Even if we only occupying 10% of the income is indeed an astronomical sum of money. Sir, I can make a ticket here, and within 20 years of the next transaction, I will be able to open Tonghis's leading silver bank ticket number." Regardless of the silver business in the small mountain, the human race has been living along the river by the water since ancient times, so there is still a road like water and wealth under the sky that is more attractive than gold and silver? Of course Cui Dongshan knew that his husband knew his intentions and plans. When Nailan Yuzhong heard the words silver and divided, it was most easy to get her heart. She hurriedly swallowed dumplings and cheered loudly. The little girl was full of energy and her eyes lighted up. Cui Dongshan turned around, smiling and handing over with this little money fan. The master of the little girl nowadays is the Law of the Fallen Mountain Palm, a fellow Lingchun Daoist. Qin Pingon took a sip of the winter tonic soup. After Cui Dongshan took the seat, he continued, I also photographed 2 mountains in the old Nanqi, one old Zhongyue and one old Xia's Prince's Mountain. They are all pretty enough. Just now the chaos there is no better than the northern Jin dynasty, where the lotus roots are broken. The country is broken. The new emperor is a foreigner and has a bad name. He is unworthy of it by a large group of former widows. Undercurrents are surging up and down by the ruling and the opposition. After 5 years of work, I don't want to be safe. Even if I want to take advantage of the fire, I have to worry about whether I will get a yellow mud in my crotch, and I am not a person inside and out. So after thinking about it, I still feel unnecessary and wait for the situation to stabilize. Besides, no matter who the covenant is signed today, it may become a piece of waste paper the next day. The Daquan dynasty bordered the 2 countries, the northern Jin and the southern Qi. The former was at least the continuation of the kingdom of Sua. The capital of the old southern Qi was reduced to a garrison for a military tent in the barren world in the early years. The monsters occupied and smashed countless golden statues of gods. Therefore, the new monarch enthroned the throne and established a national title. He would rather establish the country as the emperor in a state city and hold a ceremony. He would not go to the old capital to ascend the throne. Pieces together borrowed a large amount of foreign debts from the Yao family of Daquan, and secretly let out a lot of profits. Only at the end of last year was able to start rebuilding the new capital. If one is not careful, it will become a vassal state of the Yao family of Daquan. Cui Dongshan is not a 5 sacred prince like Wei Bo, nor does he dispose of the mountain in his own jurisdiction, nor does he have the magical powers of the ancestor who moved the mountain. Therefore, the relocation of this old mountain cost Cui Dongshan a lot of energy and financial resources. You have to lay down a large formation to cover the entire mountain range, and then perform the Buddhism mustard seed summoning technique. In the end, it is equivalent to carrying a mountain to the north. Therefore, at least half of the mountain and water journey Cui Dongshan cannot protect against the wind, so he can only walk on foot. Learn from the ancient land immortals, move to rivers and raise mountains. After landing and taking root, let the talisman puppets who pick mountain workers and fish, or repair and suture mountain roots, or travel clouds and rain and gather water transportation in the lower parcel. In the future, the 3 mountains will be moved here, and the next clan will form a ground pattern of 1 main and 2 auxiliary. After a good meal, Cui Dongshan led the way and the group began a hiking tour. Cui Dongshan helped introduce the scenic spots along the way. The predecessor of this mountain is the genus of the 5 sacred mountains. Cannot be just a single mountain but a whole mountain range. Many peaks have been renamed by Cui Dongshan. In addition to rename the old mountain to Xindu Mountain, the ancestral mountain of the next ancestor, named after the main peak, it is Qingping Peak. There is also a Fuyao Ping on the top of the mountain. As for the foot of the second peak, there is a river nearby, named Luobaotan by Cui Dongshan. As soon as Xiao heard the place named Luobaotan, he was stunned as if he had noticed the strangeness of Xiao behind him. The big white goose walking at the forefront threw his sleeves and said with a heartfelt smile, Mr. Xiao, don't be too much. Think and the Bixiao cave of Luobaotan and Stinky Nubizi, the 2 have no way to do it, I'm just trying to please. In the ancient times when the human race and the monster race were mixed in the world, and there were gods in the sky, the Bixiao cave next to the treasure beach was invincible from the cave, and it could forgive people and not forgive people and could not give way to the Tao. At that time, the Taoists of the world, the immortals of the earth, as long as they met that one, they would be a little bit embarrassed. Of course, Xiao is an exception, but the 2 sides neither discussed the Dao Fa nor asked the sword. Instead, they had a good chat. It was a good match. Xiao once went to the treasure beach outside the Bixiao cave to be with the Taoist in Tsingyi. Winemaking. Qin Lingjun walked beside the big white goose, his big sleeves dangling and crackling. Mr. Zheng, the nephew of the teacher, said this is called Feilong in Tianyin Yutian. When the thunderstorm is over, there will be a secret roar. Cui Dongshan turned his head, glanced at the old fairy Jia, smiled and asked, Second thing, what about that robe that is very valuable when you look at it? Didn't you turn it out and put it on your body, basking in the sun and moonlight? Old Xianxia Jia replied in a sad voice, Master Chui Xian's teachings are always in my heart, and I often remind myself that it is easy to change from frugality to luxury, and it is difficult to change from extravagance to frugality. Before disembarking the ship, the blind Taoist took off his luxurious robe and put on the simple attire of the contemporary shopkeeper in Qilong Alley. There is a road at the foot of the mountain, and the law of the mountainside is on the mountainside. Don't be too rigid. Since you are the second manager of the Wind and Kite Ferry, you should not be too shabby because you depend on clothes and Buddha and gold. In the future, the old Jia needs to follow people from all walks of life get along with each other, and it is inevitable that they will encounter a few snobs, but don't miss the business because of your clothes. Cui Dongshan had no words to say anything. Hippie smiled and said, "The clothes are shabby, you can change the robes, but if the sourness is hard to fade, it will not be beautiful." As a result, Cui Dongshan slapped his husband on the back of the head. Qin Pingon taught, "They are all people who are going to be suzerain. Who taught you the yin and yang weirdness?" Old Immortal Jia hurriedly swallowed his saliva, moisturized his throat and said in a stern tone, "Shanju sect Master Cui said that if you don't treat poor Dao as his own family, why bother to say that these are just unbelievable golden words at first glance?" Qin Pingon was silent. Zhongli Changming smiled. Nalan Yudi took out a pen and a bamboo slip from his sleeve, and began to record the words. Before the young mountain master went to Qilong Alley to invite the old Jia to go out of the mountain, and after agreeing to be the second ferry manager, Jia Xing personally cooked a table for wine and dishes, and called 2 disciples of Zhao Denggao and Tianjur. The old gods broke the world. I didn't speak much, I just toasted a few wines and toasts. Compared with the previous lotus flowers, it seemed very common. It's just that I thanked the mountain master for being willing to accept the 3 masters and apprentices, which gave them a place to stay. I won't continue to drift away and thank Luoposhan's kindness over the years. I live a stable life without the slightest feeling of being under the fence. It's not like a home, it's just a home. Finally, the old Taoist stood up, held a cup and respected the world, saying that he was grateful to God to open his eyes, so that he was fortunate to be here and fortunate to meet Qin Shanju and fortunate to meet all of Luoposhan. Everyone continued to ascend all the way, but unfortunately the big woods in the mountains had been cut down long ago. The countless magnificent temples and halls were completely destroyed, leaving only a few traces of the foundations. Even those cliff carvings did not escape the catastrophe, or be smoothed out by the magic of the monsters at will. When you arrive at a quiet path that is only a little higher than the mountainside, it is already higher than the bird path. The cliffside viewing pavilion and the waterside pavilion have disappeared, only outside the mountain. White clouds and flying birds passed by slowly. The white-clothed boy picked up a handful of water and laughed. "Sir, this water is good for brewing tea. This stream is not flooded with floods and does not dry up in severe droughts. It is one of the few mountainous ones to be taken. It's done. And the further you go, the higher the rank of the stream will be." Qin Pingon smiled and nodded. "I can barely count the 2 things of brewing tea." Cui Dongshan leaned his palm and stood up. "From now on, I will set up a stone tablet near here and set it up with someone. If I want to seal an immortal poem, I will write. Sir, why don't you come and improvise one?" The person Cui Dongshan calls is probably Cui Yang. There are so many people at the moment, he is not good to call the directly. I heard that the young mountain mainly chanted poems. Old Immortal Jia shouted aloud and Qin Lingjun immediately followed. Nalan Yumiao and the little fat man Qing Chaolu applauded vigorously. Qin Pingon had a dark face. Fortunately, the millet grains are not here. Qin Pingon turned his head and looked at Xiaomo. "It implies that Xiaomo, you have a rich collection of books in your heart and you can search very quickly. You can do this for you and help you out of the siege. Put together a poem about fairy tales and just expose the matter in one stroke." Xiaomo, who had a slightly subtle smile on his face, mistakenly thought that his son was not enough to support him. He immediately held the hiking stick in his arms, raised his hands and clapped gently to show his expectation. Qin Pingon took the lead in moving and only left a sentence, "Let's stay ahead." Old Immortal Jia smiled while stroking his beard and whispered to Xiaomo on the side, "The mountain lord must be confident. In fact, Qin Pingon already has a draft, but who knows a few nonsense poems. It's just that a kind of master and student Chao Qingqing was present, and Qin Pingon was embarrassed to show his ugliness after all." Xiaomo began to look through the collection of books in his heart, with green words and green chapters of the fairy poems, and nodding his head, the ancient trees are towering over the cloud house, and the total true miracle is the city of immortals. Old Immortal Jia thought for a while, nodded and said, Brother Xiao, it is quite appropriate to start the chapter with a poem by Ding Yanling. Cui Dongshan hugged the back of his head with both hands, smiled and said, My mountain is 3,000 feet above the ground, and the sky is 10,000 years tall. Approaching the top of the mountain, Cui Dongshan said heartily, Sir, the seating arrangement on the mountain gate just now is different from that of Luopa Mountain. Cui Dongshan's arrangement is in line with Howren's rules, so it doesn't seem to be a downfall. Qin Pingon smiled and said, I promised you a long time ago. You can handle the next affairs by yourself and I won't take care of it. In the falling mountains, there is a group of kindness and a strong atmosphere of humanity. The realm of monks and martial arts is nothing. Naturally, they don't pay much attention to the distinction of primary and secondary seniority and closeness. But Qin Pingon didn't feel that he had to follow the gourd to draw a dipper, do everything and copy everything to the previous sect. Unless one day Qin Pingon feels that something went wrong in the next case, he will make an exception. When he arrived at Fuyoping on the top of the mountain, Qin Pingon took out 2 things and gave them to Cui Dongshan. It's considered as a gift I gave in advance. When the time comes, there will be one more for the celebration. A pair of couplets presented by Wu Shuangjiang. The 12 flying swords of the Yuban city of the Yunwen dynasty. The young man in white was in his sleeve and thanked her husband. The cave sky obtained from Tianwan has not yet landed, and Cui Dongshan still has an interlocking landscape layout. Qin Pingon remembered something and smiled with Cui Dongshan and asked, Zhou Lian's swordsmanship is actually very powerful? Because Lao Guanju was a guest at Luopa Mountain last time, stopped at the gate of the mountain, just drank tea, chatted with Zhou Lian, a hometown man from the Blessed Land, actively mentioned Zhou Lian's swordsmanship, and asked Zhou Lian if he could do it. Choose 9 sword fairy embryos as disciples. A great monk in the 14th realm would never talk casually. At that time, Qin Pingon strayed into the depths of the lotus root flowers, only to hear that Zhou Lian had 2 nicknames, Madman Wu and Young Master Noble. At most, it was the first time the old chef walked the rivers and lakes. He traveled far away with a sword and once caused a lot of powder. Cui Dongshan said, Zhou Lian's swordsmanship is worthy of the words we're on. It is a master of swordsmanship in the world before Ding Ying of the Blessed Land. It is like a mountain on the top of a mountain with a peak rising suddenly. Qin Pingon wondered, then why did you never see Zhou Lian practicing sword? But every time he watched Xiao Heitan play that crazy sword technique, it was the old cook who was the most vigorous and supportive, and his beard and horses were a bit too much. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, It's probably because the old cook thinks that sword practice is no longer interesting. Qin Pingon sighed, It's really a human being more than a human being. There is Zhou Lian far away and the disciple Pei Qian nearby, and now there is another Chai Wu beside him. Cui Dongshan did not stay in this Fuyao for long and soon left, leading the people of the next sect down the mountain to continue to be busy. Now everyone has a clear division of labor and heavy tasks. Cui Dongshan also pulled up the 3 of Liu Beixiang's master and apprentice. All the affairs of the next sect will be done by Cui Dongshan himself, and everything will be done by himself. As Shangzong's Luopa Mountain, it was like just giving a place to the sect. Qin Pingon glanced at the backs of the 3 Liu Beixiang's masters and apprentices. It seemed that from meeting Liu Baixiang at the ferry to now following Liu Baixiang to leave the mountain top, Yuan Bao never looked at Chao Sunny from beginning to end. Then don't have to guess, it must have been said by the ears of millet grains. Phew. It's just this kind of thing what outsiders can do besides knowing but pretending not to know. Qin Pingon looked at a hill near Qingping Peak as if it had been taken by the right side of Sui, similar to the hilltop of Fuyoping she named Shuo. The mountain wind blows through the forest, rustling like a human being. If you don't consider the time spent on berthing a wind kite ferry, a round trip across continents will take almost a month each time, but during the period it will pass 17 mountain ferry crossings and loading and unloading goods will definitely be delayed, so there will be almost 1 trip a month. 3 trips a year is a full half a year. The intercontinental ferry that used to do business with Jinchi Great Wall back then went back and forth to Upside Down Mountain twice a year. Before Lao Guanju left Luopa Mountain, he only made one request and asked Cui Dongshan and Zhou Lian to tell Qin Pinyin. The survival of Tongyi's Hao Jinding Temple doesn't matter, but Shao Yuanran must be kept. The implication is that no matter how the Luopa Mountain fights with Jindingwen, It doesn't matter how many people die in the ladder, it doesn't matter if the Patriarch's hall is demolished, but Xiao Yuanran can't move this person, and the true tradition of Jindingwen can't break the incense. The Taoist school of Jinding Temple is extremely obscure, and it can be traced back to the Loguan school of grass building, star watching and qi. Qin Pingan's previous plan with Tui Dongshan was to choose the site for the next clan, occupying the position of Tianquan, as the link between the fighting body and the fighting handle, not only to protect the Taiping Mountain, but also to completely disrupt the Golden Summit view. Second hidden layout. When Cui Dongshan chooses to start a school here, Du Hanliang of Jindingwen will be more or less relieved. But even if the two sides become half-neighbors in the future, they just don't know if Du Hanliang came to congratulate himself, or send the chief Taoist temple to worship the reed eagle to test the depth. Miyu found Qin Pingan and whispered softly, "His Lord Hidden Officer, I have an immature suggestion." Qin Pingan said in a bad mood, "Immature? Then tell me when you are done." Miyu was crippled. First there is Kaik Mansion and then Juchai Island. Qin Pingan hasn't settled these two accounts with me Dajian. Bad my demeanor of the mountain. Miyu bit his scalp and said, "I want Xiaomo to serve as the chief consecration of the next sect. I will continue to retain the status of the second seat of Luapa Mountain. Stay here to practice as long as it is where I should contribute. I will never be lazy." Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "This matter will not work for the time being. I have an agreement with Xiaomo. He will serve as a dead man by my side for a limited number of years. Today's worship status is a blinding method. When the agreed deadline expires, Xiaomo will there is a real fixed number if you go or stay." Miyu said, with Xiaomo's temperament and his affinity with Luopashan. Qin Pingan still shook his head and said, "It's such a thing but it's not a reason." Miyu was convinced. It's no wonder that when I arrive at Chunban's High, I can only be the door at the accountant. Miyu has always been the midfielder of Jianqi Great Wall. Qin Pingan added another sentence. It's still the handle of our summer palace. If Pei Qian had a headache when meeting Guizhuzhou, then Mi Xian had a headache even more when he thought of the clever young sword repairers in the summer palace. Speaking is really detrimental. What kind of swordsmanship is both extremely affectionate and he has made a remarkable contribution to the sword fairy. What Yupu and Huazong are the two leaders. Qin Pingan suddenly said, "Did Chief Zhou invite you to the Flower God Mountain in the Cloud Cave Blessed Land? Have you heard of the Rouge picture?" Miyu categorically said, I have never heard of it." Qin Pingan laughed and said, "That's not what Xiaomi Li said. Not only did she say that you are good at fighting poems, you have a big literary bowl, but you are also full of confidence. She threatened to be the chief of Zhou's Hua Shinshan Rouge list. Power." Miyu looked helpless and began to play stupid. Mi Dajiangxian walked on his front foot, and Qin Lingjun moved on his back heel. Qin Lingjun said tentatively, "Master, discuss something." Qin Pingan asked with a smile. "Because of his amazing talents and hard work, I am going to break the boundary again? Are you planning to go to the river again?" Qin Lingjun choked for a while. Qin Lingjun was a little selfish, of course, following the wind and kite ferry to Tongyi's Hao this time, but it was more difficult to tell. Qin Pingan said bluntly, "Don't even think about the protection of the mountain of the next sect. I have already discussed with Dongshan, and I intend to let Hongxia serve as the right protector of the mountain of the next ancestor." Qin Lingjun scratched his head and said he knew. A little bit lost but nothing, a little sad, a drink. For the next sect's protector, in addition to the successful Yuanying realm Hongxia, there is also Pei Xiang, the lord of the Fox country, but the latter is yet to be determined. Qin Pingan reached out and held the Tsing Yi boy's head, shook it lightly and smiled. "Whenever you enter the Yupu realm, you will be the left guardian of the Luapa Mountain, not the same as the guardian of the mountain? Guin are also bigger." Qin Lingjun shook his head, a little dizzy. Qin Pingan said frankly and honestly, "This matter is highly recommended by Xiaomi." Pei Qian seconded his approval and Wanshi did not object. "Since you are so convinced, I agree to it. Who doesn't know that the Zhulu line of Luapa Mountain is the most favored on the side of the mountain owner, and the words are the most effective?" Qin Lingjun was stunned. No wonder that stupid girl in Wanshu took the initiative to find herself inexplicably not long ago, and said a few silly things to let him practice well, and don't let down the high hopes of his master. Qin Lingjun nodded vigorously. "Master, you put 1,100 hearts, I must break the boundary sooner." Qin Pingan reminded, The urgent thing is to do it without delay, and the urgent thing is to make you safe and correct. Qin Lingjun grinned. Let the jade slip on the bamboo slip when you turn around, and put it on the desk of Luopishan as that motto. Dressed in a green shirt with two-handed sleeves, a gentle look, a boy in Tsing-yi with arms around his chest, eyebrows flying. This home is under the clan. Tui Dongshan Fairyland. Cultivation of Autumn, the peak martial artist of the remote travel realm. Tui Wei Yuaning Realm Sword Repair. His direct disciple Jian Shuyu slanted back. Chao Qingqing, a trainer in the Longmen realm, is about to become a golden alchemist. The chief enshrines Miyu, the bottleneck sword repair of Yupu realm. This bottleneck is still far from the bottom, and the breakthrough is still in the foreseeable future. It's difficult to get into Yupu, so Miyu would make a joke on the Great Wall of Jianqi. Now it is even more difficult to break the bottleneck of Yupu. Xia Zongzu Shirtang genealogy monk, Sui right Yuaning realm sword repair. She will join hands with her eldest disciple Chung Chaolu, occupy a mountain top to practice. She personally named it Shuo. Yu Xiehui and Qing Chaolu, the two sword fairy embryos from the Great Wall of Jianqi, are both big disciples of the mountain. Xiao Poxian, a survivor of the old Zhuing dynasty, was born in the Dugu clan of Zhuing, and was an incognito prince, a sword repairer in the Yuaning realm. The reason why the king of Zhongyue Mountain Jinqing respected Luopishan in such an extraordinary manner was that he made concessions with Tui Dongshan and then with Qin Pingon in the matter of his own landscape transaction, which was almost equivalent to giving money to Luopishan. The maid Menglong watched the sea. He was the son of Montessori, the first-class tycoon of the old Zhuing dynasty Shirqiu, the territory of Dongfu. The two immortals and ghosts living in the Fulu skin are a pair of mountain Taoists who live and die together. They were on the ferry before, dedicated to their duties and taciturn. There are also the three troubled monks from Yezigang Shui Tower. They are temporarily regarded as the guest of the next sect. It is difficult for Yezigang to restore the incense tradition. Today the immortal family of Tonggishao has the same view on the catastrophe of Yezigang's destruction of the sect. It is almost an 8-character conclusion. Open the door and steal and you will take the blame. Therefore none of the 3 old Shuyila disciples showed up at this gathering today. Qin Pingon didn't ask why. Anyway, the next affairs, no matter how big or small, were handed over to Tui Dongshan. In addition, there is a wind and kite ferry that connects the upper and lower sections. There is a big steward, the ruler and long life, the second steward Jiaxing, Mr. Zhang Jiazhen the accountant, and the small abacus Nalan Yubiao. Fengyuan ferry boat then continued all the way south, passing Tayedu and Yuguazong of the Dequan dynasty, until the Kashandu at the southernmost tip of Tonggishao. Qin Pingon did not take a ferry to travel far away, but took Xiaomao, Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing to travel south with the wind. Of course, it was not a tour of the mountains and water, otherwise Qin Pingon would not leave Guizhujiu and Zhao Xuxiao and Zhao Luan. Qin Pingon has selfishness and care for this direct disciple, but he must not be partial in his actions. It's just because Chao Qingqing is the definitive choice for the next master of the sect. His next sect is a dragon from Tonggishao that travels southward from Tonggishao. He needs to get a familiar face with some Tonggishao snakes early, and he was the chief of Zhou before. Huang Yiyun, who has promised Yunkatang in Pushan, will bring his disciple Pei Qian to visit the house with his disciple Pei Qian in the future. In addition to the immortal formula for praying for rain, there is also the Yunshui body learned from the Jiuzhen Immortal Hall. Before leaving the next sect, Qin Pingon had already taught Chao Qingqing and Zhao Luan, and of course Chai Wu, who likes the least every day. The little girl who drank half a caddy of shochu still let Xiaomo teach it on her behalf, and Qin Pingon really couldn't teach her. Before leaving, Guizhujiu smiled and asked the elder sister he didn't want to travel far with him. Pei Qian said of course he would. When Guizhujiu waved his hand, the master sister assumed me to swim far together. I was lying at home and I could not leave the house, so I went to the rivers and lakes in vain and made a lot of money. What else can Pei Qian do? Can only be speechless. In the case of hanging a statue in the next ancestors' hall, Tui Dongshan said his thoughts on the previous hike, and planned to ask a friend on the mountain in the Middle-earth Shenzhou to help draw a portrait for his husband. He is a pill sage with the same fame as Wu Daoxian, nicknamed Gu Xiaqiu. And these two are respected by the Haoran world as painting saints. Each has its own merits. A fine brushwork for realism, a marvelous awe-inspiring brushstroke, and a wonderful brushwork that gives birth to flowers and expresses the spirit. The former and Bai Yi were born in the same dynasty and were of a similar age. Before he entered the mountain to practice the Taoism, Mr. Wu had long been hailed as, "But the age of a weak crown has exhausted the magic of the Danqing. The emperor even specially ordered it, and it must be imperative." The reason for painting turned out to be worry to disperse the air and disturb the spirits and ghosts of a country. The latter's high level of painting skills, especially the finishing touch, was described by Beidasheng Juzhong as unlike since the beginning of life. Both of them are good at immortal Buddhas, gods and ghosts, so it would be a great honor to invite a certain Danqing sage to paint murals in the temples and Taoist temples of the Middle-earth Shenzhou. The portrait of Wenxing that hung all over the Temple of Heaven in the early years was made by Mr. Wu. The old scholar was very satisfied back then, but now he is not so satisfied because the Bio Palace in Tonggishou and the Chunshan Academy in Aquarius, during the two trips, they were not immediately recognized. It can be seen that the picture the portrait like the real person like the image, but after all, it lacks a little bit of energy that can only be imagined. That's why the old scholar returned to Central Earth Shenzhou this time, specifically to find the painting saint, and patted the old gentleman's shoulder. The old scholar sighed and looked resentful. "Since I'm a friend, I won't say much. After all, it was me back then. If you ask for a portrait, you can't blame anyone, so hurry up, come to a pot of wine, a little bit grudge. Our brothers used it to soak in wine and we just laughed it off." The old man was so angry that he immediately tilted his head, raised his hand and patted his cheek. "Where is this stuff? Where did you go? Was it taken away by someone?" In fact, Cui Dongshan has already sent 2 portraits of his husband to that old man. One is when my husband was on Osmanthus Island when he was young, and the other was when a young hermit was attending Confucian temple discussions. If Gu Lauer dares to scribble, dare not to paint well, not like a god, then don't Cui Dongshan not talk about old friendship. Cui Dongshan has another requirement, that is, his husband must be in the posture of Qingshan carrying a sword. The sky is clear and the sky is clear. Among the lofty mountains the mountain wind is surging, the white water is rushing. Among the turbulent clouds, above the rolling rivers, headed by a green shirt swimming in the wind, 2 big sleeves hunting. Overlooking the earth, mountains and rivers. Occasionally a group of people stopped and took a leisurely walk. A young official who raised the department of Hedao, with an old official uniform and frostbite on his hands, was cursed by an old man with the appearance of a river worker who pointed to the nose and yelled at him. At a banquet of singing and banquet, the melody is flowing, the literati and elegant poets sing together, and there are women who immediately compose the song and sing endlessly. There was a senior official who was subordinate to the Ministry of Industry and Material Evaluation, with a copy of the official document, hurried over, and after turning over and dismounting he hurried to see the chief official. The concierge refused to let him go, and the officials begged to be useless, and they received a sentence of "get away." The servants of the dust had to squat on the side of the road, eagerly looking towards the gate, waiting for the chief to return to the capital after drinking. The chief official, who has been born in hairpins for generations, don't get drunk and unconscious today. A place with beautiful scenery, the water is a green ribbon, the mountains are like jade hairpins, the dusk is deep in deep trees, and the slanting sun pulses down the tall buildings. The immortal masters in the mountains are very busy, rebuilding the Patriarch Hall, and also hired a real Taoist man who is proficient in Danqing. He painted 5 colorful dragons on the pillars of the new Patriarch Hall. The magnificent weather of fog. Hundreds of miles in the area we are cutting mountains and quarrying rocks. We are also spending money on shopping with people from the mountains in the surrounding counties and counties. We have dismantled many old official government sites and old wooden beams of abandoned houses. Flowers, plants, antiques and rare cars gathered from all directions to the top of this mountain. Taking advantage of the dispersal of the people from the Patriarch Hall, they took the lead in a green shirt and sneaked into it sneakily. Pei Qian once passed by here and talked a few words with an old fairy who was buying wine and drinking in the city outside the mountain. This hilltop fairy family never left his hometown to go to the colorful world. So many genealogical monks died. Qin Pingon used water law and talisman to add the finishing touch to a black dragon on Liangshang. He wanted to change just like a real person. Put together again, hold down Malong's forehead, and lightly tap it to give a part of the essence of water transport, and then return it to the beams and pillars. In the night, on the top of the undulating mountains, there is a bamboo bed flying across the sky as big as a pavilion, full of craftsmanship, densely carved and unusually gorgeous. For example, There are two groups of subordinate officials from the officialdom of the Xianxia officialdom. There are two groups of subordinate officials from the background of ghosts and ghosts. And there are envoys from the Qingdao to clear the way to warn the idlers to retreat in silence on both sides. After that, there are still 2 rows of peacocks erected high 4 drivers. Ling barrier fans and big umbrellas flags. In front of the road, a few figures stopped abruptly, drawn a slight arc, and landed on the top of a mountain beyond the route. A woman rolled up a book and raised the curtain with the book. She frowned slightly and looked down at the hill not far away. The trainer from the outside world looked at the face, and he was not like an ordinary cultivator. After hesitating, she still didn't plan to sprout branches, put down the curtain, and told Hu Tsong that it was right to continue on the road. Xiao Mo saw the book in the hands of the goddess of the mountain gods and smiled. It is the 24-flower letter wind seal from a certain grand guest of the 100 Flowers land. According to a Shanshui mansion newspaper in Changchun Palace, the immortal Yinpu of the sword with the sun is on the list, but the ranking is far lower than that of the sun. Qin Pingon was confused. What list? Xiao Mo explained. It's a freshly published appraisal from a fairy mansion in Ai Aizhou. The best printed scores in the last 1,000 years have been selected. The master's Zhenxian scores are ranked 3rd, and it seems that there are also 10 printed scores. It's published and it sells very well up and down the mountain. Pei Qian whispered, it's really not authentic to do things. In the future, if master travels to Aizhou, he will have to come to the door and ask for an account. Qin Pingon laughed off. Now that he stopped here, Qin Pingon simply pulled the 3 Xiao Mo to start a fire and cook together. Chao Sunny asked, Mister, have you thought about the name of the next sect? Qin Pingon nodded and said, yes, Dongshan came up with it. It's great. Among the group, only Chao Sunny did not drink. Even if Qin Pingon moved out of her husband's shelf, it still didn't work. Very good, worthy of being his proud student and his own opinion. Looking at Pei Qian again, the amount of alcohol is good and also very good. Several times the rivers and lakes have not been in vain. Because Chao Qingqing didn't drink, Qin Pingon naturally remembered Lu Wudi, the wine table of Taihui Jianzong. He had to fly his sword and spread the letter immediately. He had to remind Lu Jinglong to be at the Dali capital on the way to the next festival. Stopped and helped Han Zhoujin, the array master of the earthly branch, to help point out the array. As for Han Zijin's side, fortunately he had already said hello. I believe that when Lu Jinglong arrives at the Xianxia Inn, he will definitely be able to leave without drunk or return. Lu Jinglong, it seems that my friend is inferior to yours. With the moon hanging on the horizon and the mountain breeze, Qin Pingon was holding a wine bowl, looking up at the bright moon, bowed his head and looked up again and drank a bowl of wine. He has already thought about how to provide water for the stream in the mountains in his own fairy capital. Known as the reunion moon in the sky, the second spring on earth. As for the first and third springs, I don't know who you love, just fight for it. Pei Qian asked, Master, what's the name of the next sect? Qin Pingon smiled and said, let me sell it and I will tell you later. The name of the next sect, Tui Dongshan, before leaving Fuyao Ping, said in his heart that he suggested that he should be named Qingping Jianzong. However, Tui Dongshan didn't forget to add a sentence. The husband's name must be better, just as a student. Qin Pingon thought it was very good. It was already the best, and he did not hesitate to abandon his spare names. The swordsman is drunk in the country, the Taoist heart is big and the world is small, the universe is narrow and the wine cup is wide, ancient and modern, short-tempered and long-tempered. Only I smiled and caressed Qingping with a 3-foot sword in his hand and never lost his life. Sword of Coming Chapter 892. Nothing happened overnight. There is Xiaoma who is watching the night. It is difficult to want a little thing. Just like before, Qin Pingon and Xiaomo traveled to Qingyuan County together, and they also worked as a dart master for a few days. The martial arts disciple who used the darts at that time had to worry about making an exception for drinking and whether he would be robbed by the gangsters. Up the dart. But in fact, at that time, in addition to a sword repairman in the ascending realm and a martial artist in the end, there was also a Zixuan Feng Yuan Lingdian who was recognized that Yupa's killing power was comparable to that of immortals. Not to mention being placed in Qingyuan County, a small country was placed in any world. If someone hits the dart like this, it is no longer called a robbery dart. According to a saying in the Summer Palace, it is called courtesy and sentimental. Qin Pingon closed his eyes and condensed his breath, taking his mind as a mustard seed, cleaning up the broken mountains and rivers in the small world. Pei Qian stood on the edge of the cliff, standing with his fist shaking the mountain like sleeping but not sleeping, warming his fist. The fish belly was white that day, and Qin Pingan suddenly proposed to go to the high places in the sky to watch the sea and watch the sunrise. Although he was down, Qin Pingan was still a real martial artist. Only Chao Qingqing, who was only a Dragon Gate monk for the time being, was not high enough for Yu Feng's flying. So Xiao Imo grabbed his shoulders and took them to the Tongyi's house sky screen together. The sun rises above the sea and instantly rises to the sky, shining brightly, chasing the stars and driving away the waning moon, a continent from east to west. If the edict is issued, thousands of mountains are like fire. After seeing the scenery and returning to the top of the mountain, Qin Pingan raised his eyes and looked into the distance, and found something strange, auspicious, about 2,000 miles away from the top of the mountain. There is no small movement over there. A mountain top with colorful clouds condensed like a canopy. This is a sign that a place of mountains and rivers bred heaven and earth treasures. It is not a genus of immortal materials born in the sun from time to time, or a spiritual and beautiful land treasure bred by the luck of mountains and rivers. The lowest rank is also a magic treasure, otherwise it cannot be manifested. Kind of proof weather that is induced by heaven and earth. However, this kind of auspicious vision will not last long. After all, compared to the heavenly materials and earth treasures that have nurtured a little light and true spirit, they are not only an opportunity to prove the way, but such a leak of the secret will be even more of a calamity. After all, the distance was too far. With Qin Pingan's current realm, he couldn't use his supernatural powers to watch the mountains and rivers, so Xiao Imo had to do it for him. Xiao Imo glanced at the top of the mountain and said, "There is a dead ancient tree struck by lightning. There is a Ganoderma lucidum growing obliquely. Cover this secret and within a few years of no accident, it can be successfully refined, but now it is more like protecting the Ganoderma lucidum that is about to resuscitate. There is a centipede on the side which has been refined into a human form. With a black dress and a youthful face, it is probably a coveted spirit creature. It is leading a bunch of mountain monsters and ghosts. It is barely a formation, but it doesn't dare to get close to that little scorpion waiting for the opportunity. Not far away, 700 or 800 miles away, there is a Yin shrine on the mountain that doesn't seem to have been enshrined by the court. The miasma is relatively heavy. It should be the centipede that is self-appointed as a mountain god, and the mountain is king. There is also a group of armored soldiers stationed at the foot of the mountain, and there are 3 middle 5th level Qi practitioners inside. On a mountain road leading to the temple, there is a Taoist priest wearing a purple Taoist robe, who looks like a golden core monk. Farther away, the team of cars we encountered earlier clearly noticed the vision here, and the lady of the palace who used the book to pick the curtain is rushing to the temple of the gods and gods. Qin Pingan looked around and said, "If it was Tongyi's Hao before, the movement here might have attracted as many immortals as his hands. Today is different from the past. Just pick up a Jindan Dixian who was not enough to see in his early years, and he is already regarded as a mountain hero in Tongyi's Hao. The new mountain lord of Dafu Academy, his real name is Cheng Longzhou, who was once the deputy head of Linlu Academy of Fayin Mountain in Dali, whose avenue roots and feet is a 10,000-year-old dragon in Huangting State. After taking office, he did something to make all the mountains and spirits north of Dafu Academy. Within 10 years, as long as they are native monks, they must take the initiative to post with the neighboring court, or report directly to the academy, write a clear pseudonym and practice. It is not allowed to travel long distances without authorization. This may seem unreasonable, but it is actually equivalent to a talisman issued by the Dafu Academy for a 10-year period. Because during this period, neither the genealogy master on the mountain nor the gas trainer who has traveled to this place cannot provoke or apprehend this group of monster monks casually. The local monster monks who have been recorded by the Ministry of Rights and Dafu Academy of various countries will not be reduced to being indiscriminately killed or manslaughtered by the monks in exchange for credit. If there is a dispute, no matter how big or small, the scholars and sages of the academy must go with other countries. The Ministry of Criminal Affairs will jointly try this matter and investigate it to the end. I am afraid that this is also the intentional arrangement of the Confucian Temple. Only Cheng Longzhou can be qualified as the head of one of the 72 Confucian academies, and he is still in charge of the Dafu Academy in the middle of Tongyi's Hao. Xiao Imo asked tentatively, My son, the treasure in the mountain, not to mention the little Chiu that used the most stupid way to learn the true meaning of thunder, but only said that Ganoderma lucidum that intercepted thunder and struck the tree as a place to gain the truth. Is it counted? The so-called heavenly things on Howren Mountain? Qin Pingon said, it's already half a master. Then Qin Pingon smiled. But according to the general mountain rules, it's okay to really intervene. Before the treasure leaves the world, it's not a bad idea for outsiders to block the mountain rules. It's worth seeing. It's called the one who has the highest skill will win, but if the cultivator has already taken him off the ground, he will rob him and commit a taboo. Chao Qingqing said, there will still be many genealogical monks traveling abroad having similar opportunities, carrying heavy treasures and on the way back to the division gate. They have been cautious and cautious. When they finally approach the gate, they still die violently and lose both human and wealth. It is not without a line. While there is no evidence to check, even those who have clues are mostly deliberately planted by the mountains. In the end, the most suspected Xianxia Yixiu became more and more unwelcome. Imbored, it is clear that both sides are monks on the mountain, but they are in the same situation, so how can they be the same? Qin Pingon said, we can rush over and watch from a distance. A strong dragon can't beat a local snake. As for how to do it, let's see. Pei Qian explained, Master, here belongs to the border of Daliang state. There is an old emperor who is old. He fled in his early years and was separated all the way. I heard that in the end he was only with 2 or 3 rebels. The root of the disease fell after the restoration of the country. He could not heal for a long time and could not be cured for many years, so he let the prince supervise the country, and then I did not know where to find a Taoist priest, boasting that he could take the fairy bait alchemy pill, and he was proficient in prolonging life. Very long life after several dynasties, mentioning the events 500 to 600 years ago, it is vivid and clear. There is also a female disciple with a beautiful face and a beautiful appearance by the Taoist priest, who claims to have a predestined relationship with the present sun, in order to repay the grace of the past. Long-cherished wish, that's why she asked her master to go down the mountain, assist and help Liangguo overcome the difficulties, so that she can complete her merits and return to the immortal class. The Taoist priest of unknown origin was quickly honored by the Emperor Liang as a true person who protects the country. In a paper edict, the imperial court officials and local officials collected celestial grass from the 5 mountains and famous mountains, and made the immortal medicine eternal pill. Promoted, the common people can get rich. Last time I passed by here, the whole country was full of mountain-driving people. Some local officials either bought heavily with other countries or went to a Xianxia ferry to scan for goods. There was really no way out. I had to fake the 1,000-year-old Ganoderma lucidum for 10,000 years. I heard some rumors that the Prince of Liangguo, who supervised the country, was very at odds with this powerful guardian of the country. I was passing by this Liang country. I was worried that the pair of masters and disciples who had robbed the high position of the temple was a pair of wild monster monks who had not had time to escape from Tongyi's Hao. So I went to the Taoist temple of Beijing and the imperial palace. I saw the woman and was born. Looks good, it can be called a beauty, but it's not like a bad guy. He complains and complains all the time. As for the true protector of the country who suddenly became noble, I think he is not high in realm, maybe he is a golden man on the mountain. It should be the purple-clothed Taoist that Mr. Xiaoimo just mentioned. Although the whole country travels up and down the mountains to find medicine, it hurts the people and money, but the Taoist also did some practical things, gathered the corpses from all over the country, founded the righteous village, and then let the big and small Taoist temples open their doors and stop their spirits for people to help them return to their hometown. I've seen that. The attitude of the real person who protects the country is still not sure about the good and evil of the other party, so I didn't care about anything in the end, and continued to travel south and downstream. I planned to stop and watch for a few more days on the way home from the north, but later in the cloud. On the other side of the cave I met the master. Qin Pingon nodded in approval and said, "It is hardy and careful, very good. I am a big disciple of the mountain, a bit old-fashioned." Pei Qian grinned. Chao Sunny said suddenly, "Sir, in fact the master sister also took the time to write this Xianxia Travels. I recorded Tongyi's experience along the way and the content is detailed, but I don't know why Liangguo's experience in the rivers and lakes, there is not a word in the book." "Right." Pei Qian glared at him. "Isn't she worried about this matter? If she is not doing it well, if she is known by the master, she will suffer from chestnut?" In Qin Pingan's words, "Did you charge you money?" Chao Qingqing smiled and said nothing. Pei Qian was furious, but she didn't show anything on her face, she just squinted at each other. Okay, when you Chao Mumutu ranks among the golden alchemists, don't blame yourself for being too light to compete in the same school. Seeing Pei Qian's long-lost golden character action, Chao Sunny was indeed a little bit embarrassed. But after all, it was not the white head of Taihui Jianzong, and Chao Sunny didn't even sweat on his forehead. Qin Pingon patted the proud student on the shoulder, scowled and said, "It's not bad to make a complaint in person." Chao Sunny nodded, "Remember." What the husband meant was that he was not face-to-face. Xiao Imo smiled heartily. Pei Qian asked, "Master, do we want to meet that purple-clothed Taoist priest? The true guardian who occupies the important temple of Daliang State. Whether the other party is pretending to be a ghost anyway, his master knows at first sight, at most a few words, it must be counted." Qin Pingon shook his head and smiled. "No hurry. Let's take a look at how this true protector of the country dealt with the imperial empress. Don't worry, master will definitely protect the place where Xiaoqiu and Lingji depend on each other. And strive not to let outsiders disturb the subsequent enlightenment and refining of both sides. The world is also strange. Human beings are no longer human beings. The genus of spirits is closer." Pei Qian nodded. "Follow the master to walk the rivers and lakes together, it is peace of mind. The mountains and rivers, looking at it will be a little sweet and affectionate." Master was not in the years when he was in his hometown in the world. Pei Qian has already traveled through Aquarius Island, North Julu Island, Ai Island, Middle Earth God Island, Jinjia Island, South Pasu Island and Tongyi Island. Haoranjiuzhou, only Friazu and Luxiazu have never set foot. According to the old cook, even the little brother who had only been to Wuzhou mountains and rivers in her home was not as much as she wandered around. She was mostly alone. Before she knew it, she went from being a small black coal to a slim girl, and then into a young woman today. Many mountains and rivers are the same people. Traveling through mountains and rivers, in addition to the markets under the mountains, I have also seen many landscape gods, demons and weird roads. The gorgeous ghost in the water, lying half suspended in the water, seems to use the water surface as a mirror, dressing against the mirror with a blue silk swaying like water grass. In the isolated mountains and old forests, there are mandrills who are proficient in ancient seal symbols. They have been refined for thousands of years and are proficient in swordsmanship. They are swept down from the top of the mountain to the mountainside mansion. The figure and the sword light are like a white stone hanging between the blue cliffs. Seeing that the other party's face is not good, I think I feel that someone has broken into the house without permission and I am in a bad mood. Pei Qian was just passing by, so he apologized with the mandrill-shaped white-clothed old man and planned to leave. It was just that the other party refused to give up and fight several times. The sword blocked the way. Anyway, no one was destined to know about this narrow encounter. Pei Qian rewarded the opponent with a set of crazy swordsmanship, and never thought that even if she suppressed the two realms she would still win the opponent. The two sides couldn't communicate with each other, but after the other party was defeated, they were not angry but rather happy, and their faces were full of surprises, and they looked very sincere and sturdy. It scratched its ears and scratched its cheeks, making random gestures with its hands and feet. It still couldn't make it clear. In the end, it offered the ancient sword in its hands with both hands, probably because it wanted the female sword fairy to teach this superior sword technique. As a reward, it can be given away. That sword. It's just that Pei Qian ignored it and left directly Yufeng. That set of crazy swordsmanship was what she played with when she was a child. It has the face to learn, but Pei Qian has no face to teach. In one temple, the 500 arhats in the Arhat Hall were all destroyed in the flames of war. The temple is just raising money to find skilled craftsmen to reshape the Luohan statue. The so-called golden body is actually to stick gold leaf. The pilgrims who became acquainted with each other can be recorded in the merit book, and they can also set up a monument to engrave their names. Pei Qian took out all the gold and silver on his body, but he used the name of the master. She also enshrines a lotus lamp and then chooses a piece of red paper, presses it under the lamp, and writes on it the auspicious language that Pei Qian can match at a glance. And that day happened to be the 5th day of May of that year. Later, Pei Qian bit his head and confessed his sisters with a mountain woman. He saw a city who had the same amount of alcohol as Lao Wei. In the willow head of that month, a land prince and a river lady. It turned out that there was a fisherman sitting by the water and he thought that Pei Qian was an eyesore. There is a small country mountain monarch with a purple waist jade, patrolling the mountains and rivers, driving majestic and majestic. There are so many strange things. Pei Qian travels the world alone like this. He won't feel boring, but he won't find it much fun. Thinking about it, Pei Qian has only a simple impression. No way, that's it. Together Yu Feng went to the top of the mountain, and then Qin Pingon picked a secluded location not too far away, and let Xiaomo use his hand to watch the mountains and rivers while spreading out 3 landscape paintings. There was a Taoist priest in purple clothes with a crown of jade, walking slowly on the mountain road until he walked to the entrance of the Xianxia temple, carrying a stone picked from the roadside in his hand, the size of a fist. He walked to the empty temple, squatted at the door and placed the stone casually on the threshold. Pan Dao's method of victory with one hand, I have to say. The Taoist in Z looked at the ordinary stone standing on the spine of the mountain like peaks and ridges. He thought about it and typed all over the manuscript and finally came up with a more satisfactory wording. It's amazing. Then the true protector of the country with a golden crown was bored sitting on the steps outside the door, as if with the stone, waiting for the return of the temple owner. In the neighboring countries around Daliang, there are no Xinjia hills to speak of, and the mountain empress who escaped in the troubled times, if no accident she will soon be promoted to a mountain king. No one argues, it is really enviable. The ancients said that the immortal medicine, the eclosion of the service, the immortal. This is the most fascinating word. The mountains are lofty and the water is full, the wind is strong and people can walk through the iron shoes and the haze is endless. The clothes are wide and wide, thousands of mountains if you are a Taoist obsessive but not comprehending, thousands of mountains and thousands of mountains higher and deeper, everywhere demons are born. Just want a rooster to announce the dawn, awaken the heavens and humans. There is still a word to the end. How can you rhyme and charm? The purple-clothed Taoist slapped his knee and said, the sunset clouds cover the moon, the stars are thin and the night is heavy, my golden alchemist, a golden elixir will come to the court, a little spiritual light will break through the mountains and rivers, I am not a god. Who is a god? The Taoist in Z was complacent, nodded to himself and smiled with his palms. Wonderful. I took out a small wine gourd from my sleeve. It was very small. It was estimated that it was like 3 or 4 taels of wine at most. After taking a sip, the Taoist in Z looked up and sighed. There are gods in 3 feet, and the poor do not believe that the day will rise to the blue sky. In the end there was a long silence, and he raised the small hip flask in his hand high and muttered, back then I immediately drank the monarch's wine in the mountains, but now I only see the blue sky and no one sees him. With a clatter, the purple-clothed Taoist slapped his head on the back, his head tilted, and his orifices bleed suddenly, and then he threw his body limp to the ground. That's it. On Qin Pingan's side, there was just a fast-moving car wheel. It seemed that he had received a decree from the palace's empress to change the route temporarily and head straight to Qin Pingan and his party. 2 maids lifted up the curtains and slowly walked out of the bamboo bed. An unusually tall woman, 1 foot and 3 feet tall. She was strangely tall, but she was whiter than snow. She was well-proportioned and her body was thick and graceful. True. This mansion empress with willow eyebrows and apricot eyes, her expression is cold, not anger or prestige. Xiao Imo thought of a book describing a beautiful woman with light makeup and thin shirts and a fairy-like appearance. I saw that she was holding the rolled-up sheet music and came slowly, with a simple crystal birch hanging from her waist and a red braided knot. Only the new thing was old and the old thing was as new. She named the one behind her as a bamboo bed for a long journey on the ferry, and named it a place for planting flowers and reading. In addition to many books, there are many clear bottles hanging on the inner wall of the carriage, each with a flower. She was more than 10 feet away from Qin Pingan and the others and stopped to ask, are the immortals here to hunt for treasure? There is no such thing as treasure hunting. The monks in the mountains have always restrained their respect with the Tao, disregarding the light princes under the mountains. And as a mansion monarch and mountain god, she is regarded as a half-official, not to mention the fact that she drove out of the border of the country and landed in the border of this beam country. She was tantamount to leaving her own landscape and the realm of cultivation would be greatly reduced. Qin Pingan clasped his fist and said, we have just passed by since we have seen the princes and empresses. It is not a mountain who can build a mansion in addition to building temples, and he is not qualified to have that pomp when he goes out. Nowadays, the Jinhuang Mountain Divine Mansion and the Pine Needle Lake Water Monarch Mansion in the Daquan dynasty are like this, similar to the Kaifeng of Jindan Dixian. As for Mui Shui Mansion after it was upgraded to Bio Palace, the golden and jade genealogy on the mountain will be even higher. As a water empress, there is no need to pay attention to the landscape taboo of mountain gods do not enter the water, water gods do not go up the mountain. She can even swagger away. The 5 sacred mountains of one country are a guest. Hearing from the other party that he was just passing by, of course the mountain goddess didn't believe it. Who was not touched by this rare opportunity in the fairy family. In fact, she doesn't know how to deal with this immortal master from a foreign country at the moment. If she can obtain the Daipo from the monk in front of her and Daliang Guo Huoguo true person, take it to her own mountain palace, and then properly cultivate the one that has already opened up. The Ganoderma lucidum is mutually beneficial, and both parties have great benefits. If you hire the little Chiu who is about to succeed in refining, it is of course the best result, but now it seems to be hanging. Qin Pingon instantly noticed the strange aura at the entrance of the Xianxia shrine, a little curious and suspicious, and glanced at Xiao Mo next to him. Pei Qian did the same, but she turned her head to look at her master for the first time. From the corner of her eye, she glanced at Chao Sunny. This Chao Mu, what can be done, a Longmen realm great monk who can form a golden pill immediately, chanting as a wooden pestle. I just wanted to use a sword to save people, but the purple-clothed Taoist, intentionally or unconsciously, gave me a glance before being attacked. Xiao Mo immediately explained in his own heart. The one who attacked this person was a demon monk in the Jade Pure realm. It is undoubtedly from the wild world. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded and said, I borrowed a skin from a golden core monk so he can hide his identity, and then pick up the identity of a real protector of the country, completely change his face and be able to show his face. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Pei Qian was a little confused and asked, Master, what about this vision? That monster monk, why didn't you shoot it earlier? There is also the real person who protects the country, letting the monster dove occupy the magpie's nest. What? Qin Pingon explained, the monster monk made a deliberate blindness. If it weren't for meeting the worldly expert in that Taoist door, it would really be nothing superfluous. Now the various forces in Tongyi's Hao, led by the 3 academies, both openly and secretly, they are carefully searching the mountains to avoid fish slipping through the net. At least it is necessary to ensure that no one of the upper 5-level demon race hides in a certain place. Let's make an analogy, a mountain sword boats, flying swords fall on the earth like rain, people on the ground, if they can't beat the flying swords and then just avoid them, it's still very dangerous. Then the easiest and most effective way to protect yourself is to find a flying sword to smash the ground. Hide in the pit. Regardless of how the Xiaoqiu and Ganoderma lucidum on the mountain top will end up in the game, who will eventually fall into it, when the auspicious weather dissipates, the spiritual energy in the mountain is completely wiped out, and they will not be looked down upon as a gas trainer in the lower 5 realms. In the barren land of the eye, it is destined that no one will pay attention to this mountain in the future. It can be seen that this Jade Innocence demon clan still took a little thought, but it was a pity that he encountered the Taoist priest in the Golden Core state, which was self-defeating. Nothing. If nothing else, the true guardian who is good at hiding clumsiness rushed to it from the beginning. The current Qin Pingon is afraid that the unidentified purple-clothed Taoist, the drunkard's intention is not to drink, and Wu Shuangjiang was on a night boat at the beginning. A fortune teller, relying on the evolution of the hexagram and the road deduction, has long been there and waited for the rabbit. After that, I just waited for myself to pass by here, and then went to the mountains to mind my business. It's just that Qin Pingon couldn't communicate with one of the joints. If you really want to calculate yourself, why remind Xiao Mo in advance with his eyes? Even if the other party sees that Xiao Mo is not easy to provoke, he changes his mind and prepares the well water for the time being to avoid the river. You can go down the mountain and retreat. Otherwise, you can find a way to scare away the UP-level monster monk who is waiting for an opportunity. It's safer to play dead than it is now. The air ripples at the entrance of the mountain temple in the distance were fleeting, and the mansion lady didn't even notice the slightest. Xiao Mo felt a little guilty. It was his own mistake to fail to see through the realm of the purple-clothed Taoist. Qin Pingon smiled and comforted, "Don't blame yourself, there are too many weird people, we are not bad about this. There are some accidents, if you can't hide then soldiers will come to cover the water. Xiaomo nodded. In fact, what comforts people's hearts more than words is the instinctive look of my son. When things happen suddenly, it is not shock, complaint or questioning but curiosity, trust and peace of mind. Qin Pingon frowned slightly, hesitated for a moment and quickly said with a smile, "Since the host of Liang Nation has opened the door to welcome guests, we seem to have no reason to get in. Let's go and see." At the entrance of the temple, a crooked old man squinted his eyes and looked at the corpse on the ground. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he smiled in a slightly lame Tongyi's Hao Yayan. "Good fellow, I just spoke with a louder tone. Great, I almost didn't scare me to death. Fortunately, I can deduct Dao Shu and do some calculations temporarily." After walking around the corpse, the old man nodded frequently and said, "I have a good skin and it is worthwhile for me to take risks. In this way I can finally go to the mountains and enjoy a happy life without being nestled here." The old man finally made up his mind, pinched the tactics, his body shape turned into a mist of blue smoke, penetrated into the 7 orifices of the purple-clothed Taoist priest. Suddenly, the figure of the old man was not seen. The purple-clothed Taoist straightened his body, instantly stood up, his movements were stiff and slowly twisted. He raised his hands again, shook the sleeves of the 2 Taoist robe, a pair of eyes turned to pitch black, but soon returned to normal, moistened his throat. Learned that Taoist priest became a chief inspector. Ha laughed, poor and polite now, fushing immeasurable Tianzuan. Then the purple-clothed Taoist priest had a distorted face as if he was very painful and said to himself, "Pan Dao is neither a Baiyujing Taoist nor a Sandong disciple. It is not appropriate to say this sentence according to the method of Taoism and the rules of the mountain. Of course the poor way is the main and you are the guest, the main is the guest and you are happy. A body skin is like a jail. Facing the 7 apertures, the wisps of smoke from the soul of the monster monk were not allowed to get out of the hole. After a while the green smoke disappeared and the purple-clothed Taoist screamed and said, "There is a small accident. With a mysterious natal creature, the realm of Yupu, there is the killing power of an immortal. Poor Dao is really. Dao is not low, quite not. It's low." Seeing the group of 4 people falling in front of him, the Taoist priest in Z looked at Pei Qian and said with a smile, "Those easy tricks in the poor way are not ultimate methods, but if they are used well and expediently, they can also benefit all living beings." A Taoist who became a true protector of the country, but he spoke Buddhist language. The eccentric Taoist priest squinted his eyes and said, "If you don't go shopping, the newly acquired disciple of the Poor Road and the Emperor of Liang do have a predestined relationship that needs to be kind. Of course, Miss Zheng. I have already met her. Ms. Zheng, at a young age, she fought fiercely on the battlefield of Jinjiazhou. Ping Dao has long heard of it and I admire it. As for asking Chao Ci for 4 rounds of boxing, it is even more famous. If you want to know, Ping Dao is even more famous. Covering your ears with your hands will not work." Pei Qian said nothing. Seems that he finally found the man in the green shirt. The purple-clothed Taoist priest looked and looked again and then he suddenly said, "This realm rises and falls. The earth fairy sword immortal, is it the thunderous Luopishen Lord Qin Shanju? It is our Jing the girl's master?" Qin Pingon did not hold his fists, hesitate, let alone condemn him. He just looked as usual and said with a smile, "Senior summoned him, I dare not come. Must be a worldly expert. It's just that no matter how Qin Pingon guesses, no matter how whimsical he is, he can't guess the identity of this person." The purple-clothed Taoist priest seemed to see through Qin Pingan's mind, and waved his hand. "A real person does not show his face and his appearance is not a real person. The real worldly expert must be someone you don't know before, and it may be the rolling maid next to the palace lady. It may be some armored soldier at the foot of the mountain in the distance. Anyway, poor Dao alone is definitely not a real master. Qin Shanju looks at too much, poor Dao can't bear it." Qin Pingon smiled and did not speak, as if he was a junior listening to the teachings of the predecessor on the top of the mountain. The purple-clothed Taoist sighed. As expected to be the lord of a sect, good temper, as expected to have seen big scenes in a foreign land, good concentration. Poor Dao has long been said, fate is not as hard as fate, no matter how good it is, after all, it can't be forever. Good, but life is hard, but I can always climb high without stopping, occasionally telling the pace of the pace. It is said that people have the ambition to skyrocket, the mind is tenacious. But if there is no luck, they are still incapable of self-control. Then this point, fortunately, I don't know what kind of unique opinion Qin Shanju, who is a close disciple of Wensheng's line, would have? Qin Pingon replied, the blessings that come from the heavens must first open their wisdom. The most inconspicuous and the most important. The purple-clothed Taoist's eyes lit up and he stroked his palms and smiled. Some nonsense limericks are written in a single stroke, regardless of the meaning and refinement of the words, but the beauty is also excellent. After coughing a few times, the Taoist priest in Zi brewed some words and said, Pan Dao is a straight character and he never speaks in a roundabout way. There are two nonsense words that I hope will not become a prophecy. I don't know if I should say it. Qin Pingon smiled and said, Senior has the final say. On the way here, Qin Pingon took out a trekking stick from a nearby object. The Taoist in Zi glanced at the green bamboo stick in Qin Pingon's hand. When you don't cut it, you will suffer from chaos. If you don't drop it, you will suffer from it. Qin Pingon clenched the hiking stick in his hand, nodded and said, Teached. After Xiao Mo appeared, he kept smiling. Xiao Mo slowly put away his smile on his face until he heard these few words that he felt were well-deserved nonsense. The chicken rib flying sword that had been stripped out was previously named Xinhua by his own son. Xiao Mo begged twice again, begging Qin Pingon help to name the remaining 3 natal flying swords. Therefore the one that Xiao Mo loves the most can drag an ancient star to the ground, and was named Lotus Root by the sun, which means that the root of the lotus is broken. The flying sword that can imitate the magical powers of others is named True. The last one that can detain the spirits of the monks is called Drunk Country. Very good, maybe today you can have a good fight with the great monk on the top of the mountain. As for the other party's surname and name, whether it was a person in the Taoist school, where it came from and which ancestor of the sect, later he just let go of his hands and feet and asked the sword. Just ask. Do not. The Taoist in Zi waved his hand vigorously and said solemnly, Pan Dao is a lazy person who doesn't seek improvement. It is not worthy of this senior and Qin Shanzhu to ask the sword together. It is unnecessary to destroy thousands of mountains and rivers. He wasn't surprised that the guy in the yellow hat and blue shirt was so high and murderous. On the contrary, it was the young sword repairers, holding a staff like a sword, which surprised him quite a bit. I almost mistakenly thought that I was dazzled. Actually, the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi did not fall, but broke? It seems not. Fortunately not. Otherwise, the hidden officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi and his accomplishments in swordsmanship will inevitably be disappointed. The purple-clothed Taoist priest began to talk about it. As if seeing the situation is not good, he turned to the usual routine. My generation of monks who are away from home want to live for a long time and get together. Being kind to others is the first priority. Blindly fights and kills. It hurts the sky and does not say. It is not forgiving, that is, not forgiving and for nothing. Sunshine Avenue becomes a single plank bridge, why bother to come? The location of Qin Shanzhu's next clan is now settled. Can the next clan have a name? If it doesn't exist for the time being, Pang Dao can help. I don't want to conceal each other, the matter of naming the poor Dao is still a little knowledgeable, and it is much higher than this body Dao Fa. Qin Pingon was very patient and listened to the chatter of this mountain senior. It's just that the palm of the hand is pressed against the hiking stick, and the other is clenched in the abdomen. The purple-clothed Taoist suddenly asked a digressive question. I don't know what Master Qin Shan thinks about the behavior of the female practitioner in Yezigang? Qin Pingon said, the chief culprit in the destruction of Shermen in his own sect in his hometown of Tonggishao, and in the world of Haoran, are all serious faults. Then, there will be no more then or but, right? The purple-clothed Taoist asked with a smile. The proud disciples who are taught by old scholars and carefully taught cannot have the following, are they? Qin Pingon originally hesitated to speak but stopped, but finally remained silent. The Taoist priest in purple shook his head and waved, go down the mountain. A pun. It's a pity that the previous fortunate. The old scholar took such a close disciple? The eldest sword immortal of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Let this person be the hidden official? Why don't you just keep the worrying seedlings? What's the matter, Qin Qing? You are all photographed by the existence behind this young man. When did Qin Qingdu and Zhenqi Great Wall both need to be like this? Daoist in Zi must be worried, and if he looks at the young man more, he can't help but ask Jian first. Sitting back on the steps, Taoist Zi took out the small wine gourd again, took a sip and said, Qin Pingan, you don't have to think about it. The person I'm waiting for here is not you but a friend of yours. It's just that. You are lucky to make friends. The other person, his vision of making friends, can only be regarded as average. Qin Pingon turned his head and asked, Are you waiting for Zhang Shanfeng? The Taoist in Z laughed and said, Is he a wise man after all? Then? On my own side there is nothing left. Qin Pingon turned around, put the trekking stick away and put it in a nearby place, making a salute. The younger generation has seen Tianshi Liang. Long Hushan Tianshi Mansion Huang Zigui, all surnamed Zhao. Since ancient times, there is only one exception, and that is the great celestial master of Long Hushan, such as the previous real person, the fire dragon on the ground. The Taoist priest in purple was expressionless, turning a deaf ear. This old true man who has returned to the basics and has a good face can only sigh. This time he went out of the mountain from beginning to end. It was extremely boring, and today is no exception. The old man shook his head. Poor embroidered tiger, sad Qi Jingchun. Unfortunately Wenxing is in the same line. The purple-clothed Taoist glanced at the ground, stomped gently, sighed and had to squint his temper and said to the young man, Operate the next sect well. Don't say anything for your Wenxing lineage, let alone talk about it. If the world is alive, it's good for yourself. Qin Pingon turned his back to the great celestial master from Long Hushan, who only knew his surname Liang, nodded and continued down the mountain. Xiao Mo's face was pale. Chao Sunny and the senior Shizhu gently shook their heads, indicating that it was all right. In fact, the old man sitting on the steps originally wanted to ask, he would ask Qin Pingon, How do you think of this Tong Yezhou? But the premise is that the other party answers the first question. After a battle is fought, even though he has won, the price of the awe-inspiring world is not unrelenting. It is equivalent to half of the country of 4.5 continents. It is in shattered and horrible conditions. But Fuyazu, the backbone of the defeat, is straight, even if it is Jinjiazu, even if there is a great ascendant monk Wanyan Laojing who betrayed Haoran, his reputation on the mountain is as good. There is also Qinchunan in Nanpasuzhou, and the mountains and rivers of the continent, especially the coastal front, are actually not bad. Only this Tongya Island, up and down the mountain, seems to be extremely humane. Fortunately, the land of a continent has never been completely drowned, but there is no one in the house. The mountains and rivers and the land are like a wild ghost sitting in the homeland at night, and it is even more lonely. The old real man rubbed his chin, looked at the back of the green shirt slowly descending the mountain, then glanced at the sky and remembered something. Why don't you retrieve the head of the great ancestor Tueshan? Qin Pingon replied with his heartfelt voice. He is Jian Xiu. The old real man yelled and asked with a smile. It's a good pavement, wonderful. Is it just to deal with similar problems? This kind of fame and reputation is really amazing. The young people nowadays are really amazing. Or is it that old scholars can teach you? It is good. Qin Pingon turned his head and said, As a junior, I would like to remind seniors at the end that it's almost enough. The old real man tweeted, Hey, he was still a young man with a little temper. Why, he finally stopped being that hypocrite. Isn't it a silly thing? Or is it a foresight? And I have begun to worry that I will spread words around saying that you are a scholar. The city mansion is very serious, and when I saw a great celestial master from Long Hushan, he didn't dare to say anything about it. So I have to make a temporary remedy and take the opportunity to pretend to be with me? Step by step, sentence by sentence. Qin Pingon turned around, looked at the old man and said to Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing, You immediately leave with the wind, the farther the better. Pei Qian hesitated. Chao Sunny said, Pei Qian, go away. Pei Qian remembered the master's question boxing on the second floor of the bamboo building before, and she no longer hesitated. The old man smiled and stood up, stretched his waist and stretched his muscles and bones. Then he would have a good grasp of the 3 natal flying swords of the peak sword repair of the Ascension realm, as well as the level of swordsmanship of a last hidden official and the weight of the fist of the end swordsman. It's not the first time that you can run away if you can't beat it, anyway. Xiao Imo whispered to the old real man with his own heartfelt words. Say in advance, will I be the winner or the life and death? This time Xiao Imo didn't say hello to his son, so he didn't plan to discuss the matter. It's just that the old man in front of him seems to have suffered a serious injury, and his heart is not complete. As long as it really fights, Xiao Imo will never let his son get involved. He had to do what he had promised the swordsmanship evangelist and Mr. Wenxing. At this moment, a young man in white clothes who came here in a hurry, bent over and gasped, stood on the roof of the mountain temple and said angrily, The surname Liang, are you crazy? Your trip to Tongye Zhouji, okay, if I couldn't beat that so or so I cast my anger on my husband? The old man turned his head and looked at the hurried Cui Dongshan. Didn't make sense. He had already covered the secrets in advance and shouldn't be blocked by this bastard. Qin Pingon was stunned when he heard the words. Cui Dongshan was very angry. Do you still need to ask the answer? Whenever you old guy speaks, my husband will be silent. It turned out that in the early years, this old man of very high generation and age had neither established a sect, nor had he taken up his followers to open up branches and leaves. He lived alone in the mountains for thousands of years, until his heart felt instinctive. I was very quiet and thoughtful and started going down the mountain. In addition to the incense sentiment many years ago, I was invited to serve as the great celestial master of Long Hushan, and the child of Zhao Tianlai was worried about the young man named Zhang Shanfeng. People, because of the hereditary renunciation of the title of Celestial Master of the foreign surname, which will promote the cultivation which is not conducive to the practice of the young people, they will decline the suggestion of the fire dragon real person. Moreover, in that troubled world, Long Hushan really needed a foreigner who was more able to fight and could use it as soon as possible. No matter what, if you cannibalize people and take shorthands, you have to bite the bullet and swim here and plan early. The result, it's not very good, it's just nothing, it's so embarrassing, it's just hiding here and dare not return to the Middle-earth divine continent, especially Longhu Mountain. Of course, he really needs to heal his injuries, so much so. In the last 100 years I have to admit my fate and Yijing should not move. He used to be a close friend of a celestial master of Long Hushan, and both parties used to travel far beyond the sky with the saint of ceremony. It's just that when they went there, the two went together and fought side by side and never thought that there was only one person left on the way home. Those who are depressed have nothing but goodbye. It's ridiculous to say that this time I came back to Tongyi's house to lurch and he failed to assassinate someone and failed to make him fall 1.5 levels. He was also seriously injured and completely deprived of the idea of entering the 14th level, so I had to stay. After several years of training in Tongyi's house, he will return to his hometown. The person who was assassinated by the great celestial master outside Long Hushan was exactly the one high and thorough in the wild world. The old Real man turned his head and asked, "The answer is?" Qin Pingon said, "It's human nature." "Yes." The old real person sighed, then repeated the two words in a deep voice, "Yes." The compassionate heart of the female ancestor of Yezigang who made a big mistake at a certain moment cannot be completely ignored. This is not to say that this humanity can make up for mistakes, of course, it is far from making up and even needs to be used by future generations to constantly alert themselves to similar situations. Do not repeat the same mistakes, but the only problem is that outsiders, bystanders, if you ignore that the brilliance of people's hearts for a moment, for any mountain monk who is expected to climb to the top, or even ascend to the sky, may also be a catastrophe in the future. Otherwise, the old man really wouldn't be so, making things difficult for an old scholar's closed disciple. If it's not pleasing to the eye in general, just ignore it. In the final analysis, I am afraid of that in case. For example, as Zhou Zi worried, a 15-level sword repairman appeared in the world. What if this person is already inhuman? Just in case even this person still doesn't know it. Lao Zhen's popularity changed completely and he asked seriously again, "Qin Pingon, that poor Dao has to rely on the old to sell the old," knowingly asked, "What do you think of the Tongyi's house under your feet?" Without any hesitation, Qin Pingon replied, "Indus is really unwilling to fail, and there is still a sound when counting leaves in front of the wind." The old man was stunned for a long time and finally suffocated. "I thought about it with the poor Dao. The content is exactly the same, but it's not bad." Cui Dongshan sat on the roof, patted himself on the cheek and smiled angrily. "The surname is Liang. Let me ask you a simpler question. What is this thing called?" Qin Pingon stared. "How did you talk to seniors?" Cui Dongshan immediately jumped off the roof and rubbed his shoulders for the old man on tiptoe. "Tianxia Liang, we might as well take advantage of Zhao Tianlai's not in Long Hushan. Say." The old man was taken aback. "You bastard, don't talk nonsense." The old man beckoned again. "Qin Shanu, come here, pull up brother Cui and have a drink together. Poor Dao has to pay you a guilty and then suppress the shock." Qin Pingon asked Xiaomo to call Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing back, and then walked to the door and sat on the steps with the old man. Xiaomo and Cui Dongshan sat aside. The old man shook the wine gourd vigorously and put it in his sleeve, but unfortunately there was no wine. Qin Pingon had to pass a pot of wine. The old man reduced his smile and sighed for some reason, feeling a little sad. He thought about those old friends who had become ancient people again. He drank a sip of wine, wiped his mouth, looked into the distance and whispered, "On the way of life. The more hope you give and you don't want to let them down, the harder this person will be." Qin Pingon turned sideways, lifted the hip flask in his hand, and said something that surprised the old man again. The old man was speechless and had to drink obediently. The old man thought it would be an answer similar to "you can have fun in hardship," but the young man next to him said, "You can drink with a real person."